I told y'all. I said it was going to be CM Punk. Actually, no, I spent the last 2 weeks saying it'd be cool, but I don't think they'd do that. I didn't think they needed to play that card. I thought they had other cards to play. Seth Rollins made some sense. It felt like he was protesting so much that it wouldn't be him, that something would happen that would lead to it being him. Jake, two thoughts. Are you surprised, or are you kind of leaning towards Punk like a lot of people were? And do you think it's a good move, or do you have to kind of wait and see? Because that's a big name to add kind of pre-Netflix. I was thinking they'd save Heyman, not only Punk, but even Heyman for January.
Yeah, I was thinking that Seth Rollins was the top candidate up front, and because I thought they were going to save big reveals for later on Netflix. But I guess this is a pleasant surprise if you were looking for a big moment on TV ahead of Survivor Series. Paul Heyman's return got a big pop. CM Punk's entrance got a big pop. The final stare down between Punk and Reigns felt like a big moment that the crowd reacted positively to. And so I guess Punk would have been my number 2 if I was going to guess, but I had been leaning heavily towards Seth Rollins. I thought it was just sort of a natural progression of his program with Bronson Reed. And so this was a bit of a surprise, but I'm not upset about it. It's just not what I was expecting, honestly.
If it was Seth, it would have inevitably led to some conversation about, are they setting up Seth against Solo, Seth against Reigns? Seth would have entered the conversation as, okay, they're up to something with Seth. He's in this for a reason. All that talk now shifts to Punk. There's a lot of parts, or there's a lot of pieces mixing around in this War Games match. And Punk is the most intriguing because it's the option that was there for a while. But I mean, is Heyman? I mean, we haven't seen Heyman vent at Roman, forgive Roman, or anything. He was just standing on the ring apron, admiring his work. So, I mean, a possibility here, Jake, is Paul changed the number on Roman, didn't update him all week, could have, didn't, brings Punk out to be his partner, but in War Games, Punk turns heel on Reigns, and Heyman turns heel on Reigns because he's bitter at whatever backstory there's with Roman about not being there for him if you got put through a table. That'd be a huge angle. Maybe it's too much too soon. Maybe it's a bad idea. Crowds are loving Paul Heyman. And, does Paul want to have a little more time being cheered? Is it prudent to have him have more time being cheered? Does Punk turn heel, but he's not with Heyman? Does Punk not turn heel and he feuds with Solo and Jacob Fatu? All kinds of, a lot of variations, a lot of variables here. Heck, Sami Zayn and CM Punk could end up with a feud if they don't get along. So what are your thoughts on the list of possibilities?
Well, I think it was intriguing to me that the look on Roman's face as the show concluded was one of skepticism. It was not of somebody who was excited about how this had played out. He was accepting of the help in the moment because they needed it. But I think he was still, kind of tumbling the different possibilities and problems that could arise from this in his head. And you could see that on his face. And so I think it does present a lot of options. I think the best one that of the options that you described is probably a Punk heel turn, but I don't know if you need to do it at Survivor Series. I would think you'd want to do that closer to maybe Rumble time. I think you can sort of soft play this for a couple of months without too much trouble. Maybe wait for the Netflix transition, and then you can have CM Punk do a heel turn heading into that final stretch for the Rumble, because I think Punk desperately needs that heel turn. I think he felt like he was spinning his wheels a little bit recently as a babyface. I think that Drew McIntyre program had extended his did I lose you there for a second, mate? Sorry.
I think I lost you a little bit. The chat room can tell us who they did not see. That's okay. I mean, you got chopped with me, so if the chat room wants to let us know who they were able to see clearly, then at least we'll know whose internet it is. But I mostly heard what you're saying, and yeah, Punk has not gone through all the heel opponents. Obviously, he could have. Had he stayed healthier, he might have been. There's been a little spring in his step, a little glow to him, in terms of how much he's being featured by Netflix. And, sort of the old Spike TV wants Sting, Spike TV wants TNA to bring this WWE guy, that WWE guy in. There's always, an executive or two who remembered WWE when Raw was on their channel, and they were always, whispering and saying, this would be good, we'd like to see this. That was kind of the dynamic there. You wonder if there isn't somebody at Netflix who has, not that they wouldn't do this anyway. I'm just saying there's such a push for Punk. It could be a couple executives at Netflix going, we really like Punk, because they were his favorite when they were younger. I don't know if that's ever been confirmed, but or if it ever will be. But Punk is a big part of the advertising for Netflix, and Peter Rosenberg brought that up in the Punk interview. You're on a lot of the posters, and Punk goes, yeah, front and center. It's a lot of pressure. I like my anonymity a little bit. Well, you're on national television as a top wrestler in WWE. You're not going to have anonymity. It doesn't change much because you're on the side of a truck or on a Netflix poster. But to me, I started looking at that going, something's up. But I was wondering if the big angle with Punk would be on the premiere, or if they'd set it up for a big match on the premiere. And so we have to think too, how does this line up with is it January 6th? The first Raw on I think it's the 6th. The first Raw on Netflix. They want to have something big. Does something happen at Survivor Series and then Punk and Heyman go away, or just Punk goes away for 5 weeks, and then they go on the Netflix debut? We're going to hear from Punk and Heyman who explain themselves, or hear from Punk who explains himself. That kind of covers both bases. One, something big for Punk on Netflix, but you have to ruminate in it for a month and a half first.
Right. Well, if you look at the Netflix advertising, it's clear that they're flagging all of WWE's top stars. They're even including Becky Lynch in some of those things, and she's currently not even, technically under contract as far as we know. So I would expect that they're going to be pushing hard for people like Cody Rhodes and CM Punk and Roman Reigns and the top female athletes to be appearing on Netflix at various points. And whether that indicates that a draft is coming soon after the Netflix move, or whether they're going to hold that off until after WrestleMania. There's a lot of money at stake for Netflix, and a lot of income at stake for WWE. So I have a hard time believing that Netflix isn't going to get most of what they want here. And if that means, CM Punk being a big part of that initial push, then I think they're going to get it. But it's hard to know without having more inside knowledge of what that conversation looks like. But certainly it's a big money deal, and I don't think WWE is going to want to put a bad foot forward. So they're going to give them what they want, at least up front.
To a degree. I also think, Paul Levesque, Paul Heyman, they're going to, if Netflix said, we want, I don't know, something ridiculous, they're not going to say yes to it, but if they're just like, really like Punk, is there a way you can make that work? Maybe that has some influence. There's also a possibility that if Levesque or Heyman were listening to us right now, they'd be like, we're booking this thing. Stop thinking there's some schmuck at Netflix headquarters who's telling us how to tell our stories. We know what we're going to do. We're going to do it whatever network we're on. Maybe the timing adjusts a little bit because they really want to make a splash on Netflix. But I don't want to make too much out of it, out of the Punk thing, even though I was the one who brought it up. All right. Let's pause and just formally introduce ourselves now. We got a lot of comments in the chat room. We got some callers waiting to join the show. I'll check the mailbag too. But let's introduce ourselves, and then we can quickly move on to more of this conversation and other developments, including poor Jade Cargill smashed on a hood of a car through a windshield and out of the U.S. title tournament.
Yes.
This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Friday, November 22nd, 2024. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. I host a variety of podcasts throughout the week. Yesterday, by the way, I recorded with Eric Kroll a roughly 1 hour preview to the AEW Full Gear pay-per-view that takes place tomorrow night. After the 1 hour match-by-match preview predictions and hype analysis that Eric and I did, then we included the roughly 1 hour Tony Khan media Q&A in its entirety. So check that out. That's on the Blue Logo Show, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast. Just search Wade Keller in your podcast app to subscribe. It is free. Again, just search Wade Keller and the blue logo pops up. Also, when you search Wade Keller, the red logo will pop up. That is the post-show podcast, and that includes this show, which we stream live on YouTube after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then also some bonus flashback shows. That is free also, so subscribe to both while you're at it. All right. As I said, I'm Wade Keller, and the other face you see if you're watching us on YouTube, the other voice you hear on the podcast side of things is Jake Barnett from ProWrestling.net. Jake, great to have you back for a very big edition of SmackDown. I think there's going to be a lot of buzz about the show closing angle, and we are going to get right into the conversation in a moment. But welcome to the co-host chair.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Wade. It's great to be here. I always enjoy appearing on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, I always enjoy having you on. So people can read your reports on SmackDown on Friday nights at ProWrestling.net. So they can read your report, read my report at PWTorch, open 2 tabs, compare what we're saying. You also are part of some .NET audio shows. Give a little plug for that, and also how people can find you on Blue Sky and anywhere else on social media you want to plug.
Yeah, thanks. I guess the as you mentioned, I do a SmackDown report weekly, so you can read that over at ProWrestling.net. Jason Powell and I co-host a flagship audio show for members that goes up every Friday, and I'll be joining him tomorrow for the AEW pay-per-view audio review, and then Survivor Series next week. So those are typically my contributions to the site, and you can find me on, I guess it's primarily Blue Sky these days. It's jakebarnett.bsky.social. My X account is still up, but I don't spend a lot of time there, so I won't be posting much.
I deleted my X account, my Twitter X account, but I am on Blue Sky also. Just search Wade Keller. I feel like our dot blue, the thing you did, like it's going to be like saying www dot soon or http, where everyone's going to know what to do. But yeah, Wade Keller, Jake Barnett, find us there. I'm just kind of getting warmed up over there. Oh, and also search PWTorch. Our main brand is on there also. Yeah. All right. So let's just let people know how they can participate in the show. I mentioned there's some video callers and audio callers on hold. If you are a PWTorch VIP member or a Patreon supporter of PWTorch VIP, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you get exclusive access to being on the show with us. The link to enter the waiting room to be a caller, you can be on camera or turn your camera off and just be an audio caller. Either way, totally works for us. That option is that link is available in my TV report on SmackDown tonight. So just go to pwtorchvip.com, our ad-free VIP exclusive website, and you'll find it there. Patreon supporters, it's just a post on the PWTorch VIP feed, and you're invited on the show if you watch us live. It's a great way to participate, and we like to have some regulars and also hear and see some new voices and faces. Another way to access or to be part of the show is by email, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. You can email us during Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, and even if you don't watch our show live afterwards because you got other things to do, get ready for bed, whatever, or go out partying. Who knows what you do after wrestling shows, but if you're not joining us live, if you're watching the wrestling show, you can email us. We got some cool late night people who got like dance parties, Jake, after watching Dynamite and Raw. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure of it. But you can email us and still be part of the show, and then listen back the next morning, and be part of the show that way. Otherwise, we've got our chat room open. So if you're watching us live on YouTube, jump in the chat. It's been a really fun addition as we switch from the Blog Talk format to YouTube. Just having that interaction with the chat room constantly throughout the show has been a really fun dimension. All right. Let's bring some chat comments up because a lot of people commented on our Block A segment talking about CM Punk, and I'll throw them up. I'll read them. I won't necessarily stop in between each one, but keep mental notes, Jake, and I'll throw to you for some thoughts on what people are saying. Brock Bedingfield just said, "I'm still digesting." Derek Hubbard, another regular, says, "I thought Seth was the best idea, but the way it was executed tonight, it felt big and special. Moreover, the end scene with Heyman in the middle of Punk and Reigns was perfectly shot. We need a promo from Punk describing why he's coming to defend Heyman." And we might get that on Raw or next week's SmackDown. We might not. Might be a mystery. There's many ways they can play this. Ken Arnold says, "I was pretty excited for Paul Heyman returning with the business casual look. No tie or dress shirt. I also love the CM Punk edition. It makes sense given their history." And Matthew Bustler said, "What about the clothing change for Heyman? Not in his usual suit, dressed up like Solo with just a red shirt under the jacket." Jake, obviously Heyman looked different. And what do you make of it? I mean, it's not an accident. That was a deliberate change. The second he walked out, you're like, okay, something is going on here.
Yeah, he's certainly not the same guy who was terrified of Solo Sikoa a few months ago, and I guess before that was, similarly at times scared of Roman Reigns. He's wearing casual clothes, he's relaxed. He feels like he's the knight in shining armor, so to speak, coming to the rescue of Roman Reigns, perhaps. And I guess the question really is, if his phone was disconnected and did he make no effort to speak to Roman Reigns about his plan? Did he just show up and introduce CM Punk without any warning? Because I think that's kind of the facial expressions that Roman was making, and he was a little bit puzzled as much as anything else. And so I'm curious how they're going to sort all that out. What Punk's going to say potentially on Raw if Heyman and Reigns are going to be there. I think that's sort of the big mystery heading into the War Games show now is can this OG bloodline team hang together enough to defeat a very stiff set of competitors? So I think it's fun. Usually there is some wild card like this heading into a War Games match where you're like, well, is this going to work or not? And I think that's what they introduced here.
I think people were talking earlier about Punk. Well, we were talking about chat room too about is this the right time for Punk given how loud the crowd response was for Punk? I mean, you're giving something up when you're really over, like Punk and Heyman are in terms of the crowd pop if you turn heel. But it has a lot more impact if you're really over. If you're turning someone because they've gone flat, they've lost their edge, the crowd is ambivalent towards them, the turn doesn't mean as much. So I think, high risk, high reward is there. But other people in the chat were saying, we'll get to it, is maybe the reactions to Punk had softened a little bit. And that maybe it would be good for Punk to have something different go on than what happened with Drew, because Drew made some pretty poignant points with Punk, and Punk going, hey, it's great to be alive in the city that I'm in. I mean, you risk getting a little stale. You're better off being ahead of that. Standard deviation in the chat said CM Punk's babyface crowd reactions were waning, so perhaps that's part of the decision to rush this along. First, Jake, do you agree with that premise that his babyface reactions were waning? And then what do you think about the pros and cons of the timing, given that, because of Punk's injury, he didn't have a chance to work against a lot of heels?
Yeah, that certainly put the brakes on things a little bit. I do think the feud with McIntyre had carried on long enough, and the focus on the bracelet had been sort of a mixed bag of success and failure, that people were starting to cool on CM Punk a little bit as a babyface. And I think he's certainly a much more natural heel to me than he's ever been a natural babyface. I mean, he's been able to pull it off at times, certainly. But I think his personality, leans in the direction of being an easy person to hate. And I've always appreciated his work when he's leaned into that as much as possible. So I look forward to CM Punk being a heel. And I guess, he won the feud with McIntyre, and he's been gone for a hot minute. And so now we're going to get a few weeks of him getting pretty strong babyface reactions. And so I think they'll probably have to let that cool off, and then they could kind of make their decision about what direction they're going for with him. But I imagine that a heel turn is in his near future if he's going to be competing for a world title match here sooner than later.
I mean, Punk can play heel and babyface, but a heel Punk and a heel Heyman with a bitter storyline over how Roman treated them that's something. I mean, that's a big match and a big story to have in 2025. The question is it rushing it? Or, I mean, it could be perfect timing and rushing it at the same time, if that makes sense. I know it sounds contradictory, but you might be giving up some things or skipping past some things, and that's why it's too soon. But at the same time, it might never work better, especially depending on what kind of promo they craft based on the internal story that hasn't been revealed to us yet. Cy T says Punk feels like a future angle, not anything to do with the last 4 years of history. And that's what's intriguing about this is as good as the OG bloodline against the new bloodline story is, and the whole history of Sami Zayn and Jey Uso's popularity, and Jacob Fatu and the intrigue people have with him. This is not rooted in something that happened in Montreal or on SmackDown on Fox. Like, this feels like this whole new thing being thrown in. When I say it's nothing to do with it, it does in the sense that if Heyman and Punk are turning on Roman, it has to do with how Roman treated Roman treated Heyman, I presume. So there's some tie in there, but Punk's this whole new card. It makes me look back at the Hall of Fame speech with Heyman looking at Punk and at the speech sit next to his kids. It's like, that's probably an angle, like more than real life. Like that may not have happened if they didn't have this in mind to occur. Obviously, Heyman and Punk go way back, and longtime WWE fans know that. Zach Cadron and I were talking on the flagship on Tuesday. You know that there's a whole new generation of fans who didn't live through that in real time. They see Punk. When they think of Punk, they think of other things before Punk is a Paul Heyman guy or Punk and Heyman as an act together. I don't think there is like that when people think of Heyman, I think they think of Lesnar, they think of Roman Reigns, and Punk is like, and they think of Heyman as other things before they think of him as a manager of Punk. So I don't think this is the reuniting of two people who most of the fans see as like this inseparable, inevitable pairing. How do you feel about that? And it ultimately doesn't matter. They can catch you up quick, and this angle obviously is just they have a big platform. They can make them a pair, but I don't know that there's a ton of like lingering positive equity that they were together in the past. And that, so yeah, anyway, Jake.
Yeah, I guess going back to what you had said about, is it rushing into this, is putting Punk on the path for a heel turn and perhaps putting him with Heyman as a heel? Is this all happening too fast, or are the matches going to happen too quickly? Could they maximize it if they had held off for a bit longer and developed the story over a longer window of time? I think that's valid, but I could also, if you're WWE and you're looking at what has happened to CM Punk over the last couple of years with injuries, whether it's been in AEW or during his stint in the company, that, well, how durable is CM Punk going to be over the long haul? And would it be better for us to get the most out of what we can from him in the short term rather than counting on him being available long term? And so I think that's certainly something that I would be weighing if I was in their position. And I think it could be a factor in how he's being reintroduced now, is like, well, we're heading into our most valuable season of the year in terms of drawing money. We're going to be debuting on this streaming service, and it's $1 billion deal. Can we use CM Punk in a way that maximizes his potential between now and WrestleMania? And as far as what happens, 8 months or a year from now, well, we'll figure that out.
I don't think they would have put Punk in this position if they weren't happy with him as a backstage level-headed contributor. I've been reporting, and I'm not alone, but I've been reporting like just he's been a model employee behind the scenes, helping out in NXT in a genuine way. It really plays into what Punk wanted to be on AEW Collision. He wanted to be the veteran who younger guys looked up to and went to for advice. Punk likes that role. He thinks he's earned it. There are other people in AEW who are rivals of his, of a similar generation, who didn't feel that way. And they obviously butted heads and it blew up. But Punk is in a professional environment, a more professional, cohesive, smooth environment. He talked about that with Rosenberg. This is a successful company and people are making a lot of money. I'm not saying that they're getting as much as they deserve or not. I mean, that I don't have enough data on that, but they're making, generally speaking, more money than they've ever made doing fewer dates than they've ever done. Crowds are big, people are over, and I think there's faith in management that, not 100%, but, like internally, I think there's a thought, the people who deserve a push are getting it, and other people are getting opportunities if they work hard. So when you drop Punk into that environment, he doesn't have anything that he can't let go and he blows out of proportion. That's his rap.
Right.
When things aren't going well, I will agree with Punk in his stance 4 out of 5 times, give or take. But there are times that he doesn't need to push back. He can just let it go. It's okay. But he can't let it go. And then his response is out of proportion with what is productive and can lead to harmony. And there's other ways to deal with things. So that's been kind of where I've landed in terms of Punk. And I don't know if he would agree with me or not. He might go, yeah, I kind of should let some things go, but I just can't help myself. He might say that, or he might think, no, someone's got to stand up. I don't know. It's not a question he's gotten asked, and I felt he's really answered. In WWE, that hasn't been an issue. It's great, and I think they feel like it won't be. I think they think they've got someone who is mature, who's in an environment that won't trigger him, and who has something to prove to AEW people, Young Bucks, Hangman Page, maybe John Moxley, whoever he was talking about, Tony Khan. So Jake, I think we're going to get 2025 isn't going to just be the year of John Cena. It's going to be the year of CM Punk too. This is going to be a banner year for him. And like you said, the key is stay healthy, but they're not putting in this position going into Netflix without thinking he is not going to be a headache and that they've got him. They've evaluated him enough to think it was AEW's fault or he's changed or a combination of both.
Yeah, it's a different environment entirely. I think that's been noted by many people, whether it's and not just Punk. The environment after Vince McMahon left the organization, after the TKO purchase, it's become a place where the company doesn't feel as much like the enemy anymore. People don't feel like they have to walk on eggshells. People are able to contribute ideas, and I think that's a positive workplace to, and something that Punk felt like he was missing in AEW, where he constantly felt like he was either under attack or fighting off misconceptions about himself or whatever the case may be. And so I think he's much more likely to want to do business in that scenario. And as long as, the company doesn't go out of their way to go back on their word with him, I think they'll be fine. It's a matter of setting expectations accurately and then living up to those expectations. But I would not expect that kind of issue to erupt with CM Punk unless things dramatically change in a way that would be really unprofessional and unexpected at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of at a point where I just don't see that happening. But with the asterisk being it's CM Punk and things happen. So, I don't know. Mike Meyer says Punk and the Future Angles equals the name of my new wave band. Mike, thank you. That's great. Let's see. David Hager says Punk even back to the Hall of Fame speech for Heyman. Punk said he would do anything for him. Brock Benningfield said after I was talking about Punk, this sounds like a perfect description of Punk. And David Hager also said, I think to me the underlying story that's building is why is the team helping to rebuild Roman? First, Cody pays a price, and I can see Punk paying a price in the future. That to me, this prompts a question, Jake, that we didn't really cover earlier, which is Heyman and Punk might have a mindset of we're here to help Roman, and it hasn't been determined this is a double cross. And the turn happens kind of in a Kevin Owens type way where something happens that they think we're justified now in turning on Roman, but our heart was in the right place. We're going to do the right thing. But Roman just XYZ, he made the wrong face. He didn't trust us when he should have. He wasn't appreciative. He held off too long shaking Punk's hand. I don't know. Something can happen. And so fans are thinking Punk didn't conspire with Heyman to trick Roman into pretending to be on his side for a fifth partner. They actually they decided to turn on him because of something that happens between now and the end of War Games. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's a valid, idea. I guess it depends on, what is ultimately unveiled as being Heyman's motivation, because he's the linchpin of the story. He's been working with Roman for, years now. He had worked with Punk a long time in the past. They played into that at the Hall of Fame speech. And if that ends up being a factor in this story, I applaud them for introducing that at the time that they did, because it is something that some fans are going to remember. And I think ultimately, I hope that, given the detailed way in which this bloodline program has evolved over the last couple of years, that they came into this with a endpoint in mind. I would think it would be out of character for Heyman, for Punk, for Roman Reigns to put Punk in this match and not have an idea of where they're going to be in a couple of months. That would surprise me quite a bit.
Derek Mitchell in the chat. We'll get to our callers in just a moment here. Derek Mitchell says, I feel like Punk being added into the storyline for War Games will lead to more beats toward the feud of Seth Rollins. Even though Rollins declined the invitation to join, he'll be pissed. I think that's an astute point to add to the discussion, Jake, is they drew so much attention to Seth saying no and making his case for why, that it felt in pro wrestling psychology terms as, well, he's protesting so much, of course it's going to end up being him. That's how pro wrestling works. And since it isn't, we have to shift our thinking, or I have to shift my thinking to, why did they make such a big deal out of inviting Seth and having him say no? It wasn't like a passive thing like LA Knight. Like, it was a bigger thing. Is Seth going to be bitter at Punk and be a player in how influence the direction that things go? And I haven't really mapped that out of my head or played it out of my head, how that would happen and who would be the face, who would be the heel, or whatever. But do you think that something about this decision and what happens at War Games maybe has more to do with Seth ultimately than it does Roman, at least in the short run?
Yeah, very clearly they have a Punk and Rollins feud in mind, and they've had that cooking for a while now. It was supposed to be a WrestleMania feud, and it just didn't work out, because of the injury. And so I think ultimately Seth protesting the way that he did, and then Punk eventually becoming the hero of the scenario, if that's how you want to identify it, is going to rub Seth Rollins a certain way, and he's going to respond to that. And so certainly once you get past Survivor Series, and I'm assuming, Punk is still a Raw talent, and so he'll be appearing there after the fact. Rollins is going to have a lot to say about Punk being willing to assist Roman Reigns after, what that relationship has been like between Roman and Seth over the years, and his outright refusal to be a part of that.
All right. Another comment here. Standard Deviation says, will Punk's role essentially be the godfather of the bloodline? He can take credit for the Shield and frame Roman as his former underling, similar to how he framed Jon Moxley. Any thoughts on that, Jake?
I guess that's an interesting idea. I guess we'll have to see how Punk frames his own participation in this on Monday, and what Heyman's involvement in that was. Because if it's Paul Heyman groveling to CM Punk to come save Roman Reigns, well, that does put him in a position of being a feeling like he's a bit higher on the mountain, and can claim that he's the hero here, and he can put Roman beneath him because they had to beg for his help, essentially. So certainly they could go down that road if they wanted to. Although ultimately, I think the idea here is Roman, is shocked by this. He's skeptical of both CM Punk and Paul Heyman's motivations for doing this, and we're going to see how that plays out, and whether it's Roman being ultimately correct or Roman just being paranoid are both valid directions for the story to go.
Yeah, it really is amazing how many different ways that this could go as we continue to talk through it, which is great, because it's not like there's only one thing that makes sense. We can imagine the motivations of Punk, of Heyman, of Roman, of Seth. I mean, Sammy, Jey Uso is super mega over right now. We could end up with a Punk Jey Uso feud before we get to anything else. Rivers Westwood says, do we have time for a Punk Roman feud? Roman seems fully booked through Mania. And that's what kind of dissuaded me from thinking Punk would be the guy. This soon, but I just felt like there's plenty for Roman to do, but maybe they steer Punk in a different direction, or they plant seeds and it goes somewhere else. Yeah, I don't know. I'll throw Danny's comment here in also. Danny Tuchito says, regarding Punk's babyface reactions waning, he faced off with the biggest babyface in the company, and the crowd is chanting CM Punk. Whatever happens, it's not because of the crowd turning on him. I think some fans were waned a little bit when Drew McIntyre was making really good points and Punk wasn't real active in the ring. Some of what Drew said rang true. I think Drew is more interesting in that feud, and Punk sometimes felt a little repetitive and, we're filling time. Let's get to the match. I mean, we had those moments. I mean, maybe hindsight is our recollections are warmer than living it in real time was earlier this year. And not everybody is like-minded, but I think there was some waning for Punk. But when you're the big surprise, and Paul Heyman just introduced you, I mean, I don't think anybody thought, well, Punk's reactions were waning, so the crowd is going to be indifferent towards this moment. I mean, of course they're going to pop for him under these conditions. He's a fifth guy. He's been away a while. Paul Heyman just made his return, and he's linked with Paul Heyman, and it's part of the hottest storyline WWE has had, forever or in a long time. So the question is, does Punk sustain the reaction tonight? And to me, Punk's mega talented, charismatic, has this legacy, history, a bond with a segment of the fan base going way back, and he's bonded with newer fans too. Of course, this is going to be compelling. And, I say in Paul Levesque and Paul Heyman and the Bloodline and the writers, in them I trust. Anytime people are bored, it's just because they're trying to fill time to get to the right rhythm and beat in their calendar to really turn things up again. But when they turn things up, it works. And I think the Sami Zayn stuff's been compelling. Jimmy and Jay and the dynamic, I think, has been true to their history. I think people have a reason to have faith, and it's not naive to think, I haven't thought of everything that they can do. I haven't thought of every caveat about why they, chose to do it now. Lean back and enjoy it, because the people behind the Bloodline have a pretty good track record the last couple of years. Jake.
Yeah, totally agree on that. I think they've earned a bit of good faith in that regard. They haven't gone down too many paths where you felt like, oh, this was obviously the wrong move. And they've had to walk it back or pivot quickly to get away from it. And so I think they do have a long-term end for this in mind, and we're just kind of on the road to that. But if they can involve other people, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, and now CM Punk into this mix, well, now then you can kind of spin them off into other stories that kind of play off their interaction with the Bloodline, much like they did with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, where, Cody makes that decision to team with Roman Reigns, and now suddenly it adds in a completely different dimension to his other relationships on the card. And so I think that's kind of a similar choice that they're going to make with Punk here, is like, what are other people going to think of him for teaming with the Bloodline, and what does that do to him ultimately 2, 3, 6 months from now?
Yeah. Super chat from Jordan Saylor just says, I'll be there. This could be really good. I don't know how many more seats are available, but this is going to spark some sales of whatever, and the secondary price market for tickets Saturday, I think will go up too. This is something people are going to want to be there for. This feels historically significant in the story arc of Roman Reigns, of Paul Heyman, of CM Punk, of the Bloodline, of modern day WWE. Jake.
Yeah, certainly I would agree with that.
Yeah. So let's see. I wanted to do a couple of. Well, you know what? Let's go to callers. There's the chat room keeps throwing good stuff at me, and at us here. Oh, we do have I have a super chat I got to get to, because it's a very generous one. Vin, thank you for this super chat. He goes, Wade, how are you liking the current WWE storytelling under the Triple H regime? Seems more compelling and adult storytelling and characters that you've asked for. How do you rate creative out of 10? Rating creative out of 10. I don't know. I mean, I'm like 8.5. I mean, like, my hesitation with giving it more than that is just the finishes on TV. I think there's just too many matches they book where there's a non-finish. Sometimes they don't even explain what the finish is to the audience, and I do not like that. I don't think that's good. I think you chip away at fans' trust and investment in matches if oftentimes it's going to be a double count out, a lame DQ, or just a no contest where they don't even address it. So that's a critique. I could certainly come up with specifics that I don't think qualify as just like mere nitpicks, where I'd be like, yeah, I think they missed something there, whatever. But I think there's, Jake, enough of what Levesque has done. There's for the most part, an absence of irritants. That was a big thing when he took over Vince McMahon. He didn't want to implement major changes that would get him in trouble if things took a downturn, but he couldn't get in trouble for simply eliminating irritants. And I don't really watch the show thinking, man, that's some old white guy with some outdated perception of how women should be treated, or how men should be treated, or how legends should be treated, or how fans should be talked at. It just feels like a more positive company. And I think people who follow it week to week feel more proud to be a WWE fan than they have in a while. I mean, though, obviously there's issues with what did management know and when did they know it and all that. And I just don't think there's compelling evidence that is at the forefront of fans' minds that's causing them to hesitate to support WWE the way they might if something more overt was happening. And certainly under the Vince McMahon, that was the case. Jake, what are your thoughts on Vin's super chat question? How do you rate Levesque's creative era so far on a 1 to 10 scale, or with words?
Yeah, I think somewhere in that 8 range is probably where I would land. I guess if I was going to call out one specific thing to criticize, it's that I think the women's division has taken a step backwards since Paul Levesque has taken over full time in creative. I don't think they've done a great job of framing that division stars particularly well, and I think there's injuries have played a part, and obviously Becky Lynch stepping away played a part, but it just doesn't feel as dynamic as it once did, and I don't know if there's one single thing to blame there. It just hasn't been, it could just be a bad stretch of talent performances and things along those lines too. But I guess that would be the one area where I'm like, man, it doesn't feel as hot as it once did. But I will give them a lot of credit. I think the show has been a lot more consistent, week to week, and I think the television is much more watchable than it was just a couple of years ago. So I give credit where it's due, but I still think there is some room for improvement in some places too.
I'll say with the women's division, it feels, and I'm not the type to ever blindly defend anybody. I'm not loyal enough or friends enough with anybody in wrestling to just like always look at the bright side and look at and ignore the dark side. So I don't want to come across. I just want to be clear. My history is, I think, pretty good in that regard. Decades of track records of people who I liked who didn't like what I said and then turned on me, turned away from complimenting me. Going back to Bill Watts, Jim Cornette, Paul Heyman. I mean, we've all had. I could go on. Joe Pedicino. I don't want to make it seem like I make enemies with every promoter who I had a good relationship with, but I'm not shy about expressing it if I think they're flailing a little bit. And so when I say this, you mentioned the women's division. I want to give a positive framing of it, which is the NXT, which is a big part of Levesque's history, and Shawn Michaels is a friend. It just feels like Levesque is going, I got a lot of things that I'm excited about doing. Most of it is on the men's side of things, but we've got this 18-month plan, and we are like, you just wait. We got these NXT women. We're trying to figure out who's going to advance quick enough to hold their own on the main roster. But there's going to be a moment in time or a stretch of weeks where people suddenly just go, holy crap, look at how many women are on Raw and SmackDown. It's all these fresh faces mixing with all these legacy names. And I mean, they're primed for that possibility. And so that's a good thing. Even if there's critiques of some of the things they're doing that we've seen on Raw and SmackDown, I would be more apt to be concerned or downgrade them for that if it didn't seem like there's some real serious effort on the NXT side to build that next wave. And with a 3-hour SmackDown and roughly a 3-hour Raw starting next year and a U.S. women's title. I mean, there's some indications that's going to kick in next year. We're going to see more women's segments. And so Jake, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I hope that's right. I do think the NXT women's division has been a bright spot. The introduction of the women's U.S. title was a bit of a head scratcher for me because it did feel like they're struggling to keep the two titles they have exciting and full of fresh matchups that people are excited about. And so it was like, well, do they have enough mid-carders that feel hot enough to carry this thing? And I think, there's some indication, at least, that Chelsea Green is getting those types of reactions. And so I'm optimistic that she could be the one, to carry that torch. But I think they're going to need an infusion of that NXT talent sooner or later to really make these rosters feel full. There has been a lack of women who have moved, from that mid card to the upper card lately. And I don't know whether you can hang that on Triple H or his regime necessarily, but it does feel like there's been a slowdown in the elevation of top women's stars that hopefully they can reverse in short order.
On the bright side, not to get too sidebarred on the women's, I think they're getting more out of Naomi than I think most people thought over the last month or so. And Nia Jax, I think, has had a really good year. I think people who really, really wanted her to fail or really wanted to justify their pessimism that she would ever be anything but a negative. Enough positives happened to Nia Jax. I think that has softened. Nia Jax is having good matches. I would argue good promos, even if her sort of resting face is bad acting. I think it's sort of part of her shtick. It's more of a feature than a flaw, but teach their own and how they interpret it. And then Tiffany Stratton, I think people are excited about her. There's some critiques about the week-to-week portrayal of her and if it's setting her up for what they eventually want to do. But I really like the competing lackeys with Candice LeRae. I mean, they're getting something out of Candice LeRae. But Bailey's been sort of hit or miss. The Io Sky faction. I'm blanking out. What was Bailey's group? What are they called? Oh, damage control. Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. Their turn wasn't really a turn, and there's definitely some sloppiness. It just didn't have to be that way. And then obviously losing Becky Lynch, losing Charlotte unexpectedly. Some things were out of their control too. Okay, let's go to our first caller. Kevin from Colorado is on hold. Kevin, we're bringing you on. Thanks for calling. Thanks for holding. What is on your mind about SmackDown tonight?
Hey, Wade. How's it going? Hey, Jake. How's it going?
Good to talk to you.
All right. So you guys were just talking about the women. So I guess I'll just start off with just that first match tonight, the U.S. Women's title qualifier, the triple threat.
Yeah.
So I just had a couple questions. Where am I going to start off with? Do you think that they really needed to protect Bianca that hard, like by having the distraction of Jade being passed out? Because I think that diminishes Chelsea's win a little bit, and I thought she needed a little bit more of a decisive win. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, a fair comment, Jake. We had the out with Bianca coming to Jade's aid, and then Jade gets removed from the tournament, and so neither of them had to do a job, although they would not have had to anyway in the triple threat format. Bianca could have been competitive, and the pin gets stolen. Jade could have been in the match, and someone else could have submitted somebody else. So to me, it feels less like a cop-out and more storyline driven. And it's not to create an excuse for Triple H, but I mean, easily Bianca could have, in a triple threat match, you're not a loser. You're just not a winner if somebody else pins somebody else. It's not like you're actually doing a job. So I don't look at Bianca wandering off and leaving the match or Jade being removed from next week's show as like a cop-out. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I guess, Chelsea Green is the type of opportunistic character who would try to, steal a win in that exact scenario. So it didn't offend me outright that they decided to give Bianca an out. But that said, I mean, it would have been a stronger win if she had been at ringside and she had managed to, steal the win while she was out there. But ultimately, I think the idea was, well, we have two things to accomplish here. We want to forward this story with Bianca and Jade. We want to give Chelsea a win. Let's just, make sure this happens simultaneously. And it saved them from having to dedicate two separate segments to those things. And so I think ultimately it's fine, but I guess I would have probably agreed with Kevin that I would have preferred for Chelsea just to get a win while Bianca was out there. And then you can quickly transition to whatever was happening with Jade. I think you're caught on mute there, Wade.
The win feels more important if she overcame a presence of somebody of Bianca's stature. And I do get that. And that said, Chelsea Green isn't going to be damaged. I shouldn't say that. She might be damaged, but she's not going to be like a serious champion anyway. She's a good worker, but she's going to be more a honky-tonk man IC champ. Someone who claims she's the greatest, but that's absurd and she's not. That's my take. So if this was like Tiffany Stratton's big moment, like let's say, just for example, they're going to make her U.S. champion. Let's say she just broke away from Nia Jax. She's in a triple threat. This is her chance to win a singles title. And let's say even the Money Bank's briefcase not in this, just to create my scenario. You want all the big stars out there that she overcomes to win. But that's just not Chelsea's character. I don't think that's like super important to her, Kevin. So I'll throw that out there too. And in fact, the more that Chelsea brags without merit is probably better for her heel character than overcoming Bianca and actually winning.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And like you said, I was expecting her to steal a pin, but even just having her out there at ringside, I think would have helped a little bit more. But I mean, I guess I'm just nitpicking a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. What else, Kevin?
And I'll do one more thing. I got a couple pages of notes, but have you guys noticed? This is probably the first SmackDown I've watched live in probably months, ever since they switched back to USA. But have you guys noticed the transitions going to commercial? They did it a couple times tonight. Like the first time was in the LA Knight versus Santos match. He did that jump over the top rope, and they like replayed it in slow-mo as they were going to the commercial break. They did that several times, and I just want to point that out. And that's something that I had not seen, and I really like that little touch that they're that they're throwing out there like that.
Jake, did you notice that in the past, and what do you think of it as a technique?
I've been noticing it more since Lee Fitting took over for the primary production. It seems like they're trying to do more of a sports like presentation at times. We get the dramatic filming of people as they arrive to the arena, as the shows kick off. We get more slow-mo replays of impressive athletic moves. I guess I don't know whether or not it's been something that they've done heading into commercial breaks so much, but I did pick up on it tonight. But I think it is part of this new presentation that they're taking on with this new approach now that Kevin Dunn is out of the picture. And I've enjoyed most of it. I mean, I think some of the camera angles that they choose at times have been a little odd, but I think they're just experimenting, and I appreciate that too. Trying something is not always.
Cool. Kevin, anything else you want to bring up before we move on?
Nope. I'll leave some other topics for some other people, and I'll go ahead and sign off.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks. Nice.
Thank you.
You bet. The masked Kevin from Colorado. All right, let's bring Sean from Tennessee in. Sean Plichka, how's it going?
It's going well. It feels like a year since I've been on here. Life has happened.
It feels like just
crazy.
yesterday. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot's happened. It's been a busy time for me. What I do, the holidays get very busy, but I've been keeping up with the shows, listening to your shows religiously every week, and love what you guys do. Jake, always fun to be on with you, my friend. A lot to digest. You guys had a lot for me to digest. As far as tonight, just going by what happened tonight. So when Heyman's music played and when he yelled, I was shocked in a bad way because I did really want them to kind of play this out for a while and to see, okay, Heyman isn't answering his calls. Roman's getting worried, like what's going on, and start to build, like you said, Wade, build that kind of Roman. Let him talk. Let us know why. Hear more from his character about Heyman. Why? What's going on in his head, and then kind of eventually, like you said, maybe after Survivor Series or even at Survivor Series, something to kind of build Heyman in. And so when they brought him out, it was kind of surprising. And then I know you guys have been talking about Punk coming back, and it definitely initially didn't make a lot of sense to me. And then now seeing it and hearing you guys talk and hearing my thoughts about it, I think it's a really cool move because I think, yes, Punk and Heyman have the history. They're going to play, talk more about that after Survivor Series and show more of kind of the dynamic between everyone involved. And I think it's going to be really, really good. And eventually, I do think Punk and Heyman are going to turn, and I think it's going to be perfect. And I think it's going to build right into this story they've been continuing to tell. This has just been so good every way around. Like you said, the way Sammy, the only thing I didn't like about these last few weeks is when Sammy kind of did the swerve, like, oh, am I going to team with Solo? Obviously, we knew that wasn't going to happen, so that was kind of a dumb thing for me to see. But other than that, I think it's been really well done. I think Punk, he's going to fit in really well. And with Seth, I think it's ultimately going to – I don't think Seth – he's going to have issues with Punk, but I think it's going to be when Punk turns heel and Seth's going to eventually kind of lean a little on Roman's side after time and want to just go after Punk as a face because Seth doesn't need to turn heel at all, ever. Just keep Seth as a face. He turned way too many times back in the day. We don't need that again. And Punk would be a great heel building into that Mania match. So I've liked what they've done a lot. So I like everything that they've done, really. I just – this story to go as long as it has with everybody involved and all the meticulous stuff they've put into this, I just think it's been so well done. And I think we're going to keep seeing layers added onto it.
Someone in the chat earlier had mentioned that Heyman is dressing a little more like Solo Sikoa than CM Punk or Roman Reigns. And,
right.
We talk about, Sean, you talk about all the ways we're exploring this. And, my thought again was, Punk was a candidate. People were guessing, talking about it. Junaid is in the chat taking credit for telling us it was going to be Punk.
She did.
And he's accurate. He did. But my just thinking was this: there's just so much to work with here. Why play that card early? Or it felt like it would be early to play the card. It would busy things up too much. But again, I think I said at the time, like my caveat to saying I'm not leaning that way because the Seth thing just felt like it was so in our face. Of course, it's going to be Seth because of the feud with Bronson, and it can set up Roman. But if they do it, they clearly have a reason for it, and we got to have some, little. I don't know, faith is a word, but trust that they're not doing it without really thinking through the things that we're thinking of. I mean, I don't think that they're just going to mess with a good thing by not thinking of something obvious that could go wrong. Jake, what do you think about the Solo comment in the chat? Like, is it possible Heyman doesn't side with Punk? Punk goes off on a feud with somebody else? Bronson Reed, Seth Rollins, Gunther, I mean, that was already put out there. And instead, Heyman sides with Solo. And the Punk, bloodline thing is temporary, and they revisit it at another time.
I mean, I'm not entirely against the idea. I guess I think it's one of those situations where you'd have to give me one of those masterful Heyman storycraft promos where he really gives you a compelling reason to think that, he gained respect for Solo for putting him through a table in Madison Square Garden, right, or something like that, where you're just like, okay, well, I guess, it doesn't seem like the natural way to go, but I mean, if you're trying to subvert people's expectations and that's your goal, then you certainly could go down that path. I think it's much more straightforward for me to believe that, he might turn away from, being with either Roman or Solo and try to, hitch his wagon to Punk again, because, the interfacing with that family has brought him nothing but, heartache and devastation. And so I think there's obviously a couple of paths they can go. I would be more entertained by the marriage with Punk and a heel turn. It feels much fresher to me than having him go back to either Roman or Solo. And I think Roman needs to be on his own as a babyface, and I don't know that there's much there for Heyman to do with Solo unless it's just a really short-term thing. So that's where I kind of stand on it. But I think they've earned enough good faith for me to just kind of watch it play out and see what happens.
Matthew Busler was the one who said, "What about the clothing change for Heyman? Not in his usual suit, dressed up like Solo with just the red shirt under the jacket." So I want to give Matthew credit for that. That was on my mind. So I mean, Sean, there are so many ways this can go, and it's fun not knowing. It's fun imagining different ways it can go. And frankly, with the red herring of Seth, which I think will have a purpose beyond being a red herring, but that sort of double reverse psychology. We're gonna say he's not going to be in it so hard and he's going to be so firm and strong and saying I'm not going to be part of it. Of course, it's pro wrestling; he'll be part of it, and they double swerved us, and now he isn't, unless Punk gets laid out between now and Saturday and Survivor Series, and then Seth has to be a replacement. I mean, I'm not even ruling that out. I mean, there could be so many things that could happen. So anyway, Sean, back to you.
Yeah, I want to go back to Jake, what you just said. I think what makes Heyman and Punk so fun again would be, to be honest, as good as Punk has been promo-wise over the years, like he hasn't been as good of a promo lately. Like he could still cut a promo here or there. Like it could be fine, and especially as a heel, it'll be a lot better. But Heyman with him, the dynamic with each of them talking would be so just really fun to watch. And then you brought up the great point is this Roman character continues to develop, this face role gets deeper, and we kind of the introspective part of Roman. I really want to see him in this big feud whenever it is, coming up to Mania. I want to hear a good, awesome face promo that I know he can deliver. I know he can do it, and this would be time for him to be on his own with the guys behind them to do it. And I think it's going to be great. I'm loving, like I said, it's going to be fantastic. I'm really loving what they're doing. But I wanted to move off of that because we talked about that for a while. I wanted to lean into the Cody and KO stuff.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. That was
Thank you, Sean. Yeah.
Fantastic stuff.
It's good to bring this up.
It was so good. I mean, KO, yes, he turned a lot back in the day, but he is not. I mean, they turned him face for a while. And I was, liking him as a face. And I thought, okay, this is a good role for him. He's doing some good stuff in this role. He's had some good feuds. But ultimately, he has always been better as a heel. And this heel of, I'm right, and I know I'm right, and this is what I'm saying, and I'm true. I'm playing true to this. And Cody, it's all your fault. And giving still valid reasons why he would think he's right. And then Cody to say, you had your chance at Bash in Berlin to beat me up and win the title and you didn't. Is that my fault too? I just thought everything about the promo war between them was really, really good. Now, we were kind of laughing because Cody had to get the last word. Yeah, that's true. He kind of, he did get the last word, but I thought the way he talked at the end, I just thought made it very compelling. I'm loving where they're going with this. KO, both characters are just in such a good place. I want to hear what you guys thought about that whole segment.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Kevin Thompson in the chat says fantastic segment. JC Scooby 1976 says KO is right. Andrew H said KO should have had the final words. Cody didn't hit it out of the park. Brock Benningfield, though, says both guys had a great promo. Jeremy Diaz says the Cody and KO segment tonight was the best thing that has happened with them so far. Adam Kidd says Kevin is still the face.
You don't like Cody. Get over yourself. It's all, come on.
And Derek Mitchell says Cody eviscerated KO on the mic, telling him he's self-sabbaticaled his own career. And Ken Arnold just says it's not a surprise that Cody and KO would have a tremendous verbal exchange. Jake, what'd you think?
I love the intensity. I love when programs in and around the world title also add that dynamic. It's not every title feud that has to feel like a blood feud, but when they get to that point, I think it's great. This is the most intense we've seen Cody since his feud with Roman Reigns around WrestleMania, and I think they've given Kevin Owens something to really sink his teeth into. He feels like he's justified, even if you don't agree with him 100%, you can kind of identify with somebody who feels betrayed by somebody siding with Roman Reigns after all of the, look back at, say, the Royal Rumble, a couple of years ago, and just wars that they were in, all the chair shots and everything else, and torture that Roman put Sami Zayn through, who ultimately, is still Kevin's his best friend and longest career ally. And so I think there's plenty of motivation for Owens to feel the way he does, and I think ultimately, I think once they, looking beyond this, the ultimate, knife in the chest for Cody Rhodes is when Orton comes back and blames him too, because I think that's ultimately where this is going.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I thought it was a good night for Cody just on the microphone. He didn't do the, what do you want to talk about? Did he?
No, he got right to the point. He got right.
Yeah. So I think that's good. I mean, I think it has a chance for fans to go. I mean, it can be cute and fun, and it also can seem shticky and gimmicky and whatever. So, and his intensity in it sounded like Cody had a cold. His voice was a little hoarse, but I think if that's the case, it added to the gravelly intensity of it. He also wasn't in the fancy suit, which KO called him out. I'm like, I wore a tuxedo t-shirt. Can't you wear your sleazy politician suit?
That was good.
So it was fun back and forth. Kevin Owens he's really smart. His character is really good at rationalizing his own actions, and there's enough truth that it doesn't feel absurd. It just feels like Kevin lets these things build up inside of him, and then he, a little bit like CM Punk in AEW, he can't let things go, and he lets them build up, and then there's a release valve, and it turns into actions that others see as going too far. I mean, there's, I think, a parallel there with Kevin Owens' character and how Punk worked in AEW, and Kevin is this sort of animation of somebody who can talk themselves into justifying some pretty heinous actions and cowardly actions and all kinds of heelish moves. But then, as the chat says, he can be persuasive in getting some fans to say, wow, I'm kind of on Team KO. But I think Cody, more than Punk did with Drew most of the time, when Drew was making kind of some good points about Punk, I think Cody had good comebacks. I mean, I do. I think that in the end, if you're objective, you're open-minded, you're not just looking to be a contrarian or a heel fan, or you just don't love KO. I think Cody's comebacks were good, and good enough, and that's important because Kevin, fans are going to have a tendency to want to cheer KO unless he's against a strong babyface. And I don't think Kevin Owens is trying to get cheered at the expense of Cody. I think Kevin Owens is trying to make a really good case so that Cody could look really good in rebutting it effectively. Right. And I think that's how it played out. Sean, what else?
Yeah, so I want to just get on a few quick things. I want to talk about just LA Knight a little bit. I know it feels so kind of minor compared to all the good stuff that was on this show, but we've seen LA Knight and Santos feud before. It just felt so, it was what it was. It was fine. I mean, the match was fine. I just think now with Shinsuke back in the picture, I like what Shinsuke coming back was cool. I like he's a good solid mid card guy like this. I think it works good for his character, his persona. I think he needs to beat LA Knight, honestly. And it's not that I don't like LA Knight. I like where he is. He gets good crowd reactions. He's doing some cool things. He does have charisma and all that. I think it's fine. I don't know. His title run's not doing a whole lot for me. They're not putting anybody in his path so far other than Shinsuke that's been convincing. Like, okay, we know this guy. And Santos has been defined down to such a low level. It's kind of disappointing because I really think Santos has upside in that mid card. But Shinsuke, what do you guys think about Shinsuke winning when they have this match, whenever it's going to be? Because I think it would do some stuff for Shinsuke, help him and wherever he's going, just in this upper mid card role. And LA Knight can be fine without the title. I mean, at this point, I don't think he needed it for a while, but now I don't think he needs it at this point.
Well, Jake, I mean, Shinsuke had a good thing going with his vignettes and, getting inside people's heads. I'm glad they continued it. I think it's him being gone for a while. He made a big impact. I think he's at the right level at this stage of his career. I don't know that we want Shinsuke as a babyface being the fifth man with a bloodline. Like, I think that would be overbooking him. It would feel sort of random. But of course, my mind, when Sammy goes, there's nobody left, I'm thinking to myself, I mean, there are people left you could ask. Maybe they're not worthy of the spot. But it's not like you asked everybody. But in the case of Shinsuke, I mean, U.S. title is a good spot for him. And LA Knight can do a lot of talking. Shinsuke can play the mind games and do the stuff through the vignettes. I think it's an effective use of somebody who still has some cachet as a character at this point at his age and with his work. And I mean, I think he'll have a good, some good matches with LA Knight. Jake, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I wouldn't, I guess going back to what Sean said, I wouldn't be offended at all if they decided to give Shinsuke a run with the United States Championship. I think he plays this role convincingly. I think that when they pivoted to, the Japanese spoken vignettes with subtitles, it was a big upgrade for Shinsuke, who never really quite got the hang of English language promos. And I think the psychology that they have him playing now, the mind games, talking about LA Knight being insecure and being obsessed with his own failures and desperate to hold on to this newfound success that he has. It's an interesting place to take LA Knight because he's such a surface level character most of the time. It's just catchphrases and one-liners and that whole business that we rarely see anything that's underneath the surface with him. And so I hope they can bring something new out of LA Knight here. And if it means, having him drop the United States Championship even for a short time, I think it would be a benefit to both he and Shinsuke in the process.
Sean,
because Jeremy just put in the chat, he's one of my good friends. So props to him, but he's higher in LA Knight than I am. He thinks he should be going for a, big time be upper in the card. And I think this is where he fits. I just don't see much upward trajectory for LA Knight. I don't think he's a big time star like some of these other guys. And I just think the U.S. title was a good title for him to have, but I don't think he needs to have a long, long title run. I think if there's somebody more compelling you want to bring along and let LA do some other feuds, I just think this could be fine for Shinsuke. But going back to the women's U.S. title stuff, which I did not think they need a women's U.S. title. I don't like the concept. I just think, we have to have women's titles because they have men's titles. No, we don't. We just don't. I mean, the women's division has had their issues to where I think they need to make the main titles feel like a big deal and have them go for the, build up to those. And so, and I don't like that they're always doing triple threats. Like when they have tournaments, I feel like they always just go to the triple threat route just to get out of finishes and get out of all this stuff. Just have one-on-one matches, have women beat other women, and it's okay. It's not going to hurt any of these people. Like you could have done the Bianca stuff without this. You didn't need to have her in the match, a U.S. title match, tournament match, to do the angle you just pulled. I just don't think you need to do that. So what do you think about triple threats? And I mean, Chelsea Green should win the women's U.S. title if you're going to have it. I think she's one that could build it up, and she's a fun character, and the fans are into her. So what do you guys think about all I had to bring up there?
If they never had another triple threat match in WWE, I wouldn't be sad. I wouldn't complain. But I cannot get worked up as much as you are, Sean, about this in this context, because my issue with triple threat matches is when it feels like it's they have done a poor job building up a one-on-one match. They think throwing somebody else in there will add something extra to it. To me, it's a sign of not planning out your booking or pushing somebody in a main event who isn't capable in the key ways to just carry a really good one-on-one match. And then they're just so many lame aspects of a triple threat match. You know, anything goes. It's like, it's ridiculous. Like, there's no rules because there's a third person. I mean, you can have rules like that. You can tell people if you cheat, you get disqualified, and then it's one-on-one. I mean, it's just super easy to solve. So all kinds of things about triple threats I don't like. But in this case, I just think it added a little sort of optical prestige to the tournament to have big names in it, and it helps whoever wins it to not look like they won what is clearly a secondary title. So, yes, it's a bit of a crutch because they don't want big stars to lose one-on-one matches if they're not going to win the tournament. So the triple threat formula allows them to load up the tournament, add prestige to the title, but ultimately not have a bunch of cheap distraction finishes and end up with somebody like Chelsea Green winning, even though Bayley, Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, big names decided to enter it. So this is a case where I'm more forgiving because I don't think it's trying to avoid anything more than something they should avoid, which is a bunch of top-tier main event world title level women losing to secondary women who are going to hold the secondary title in the end. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think there's also an aspect to it where they're including some talents that they may not want out there for extended singles matches, you know, like where they may not trust them to have a 10 or 15 minute match on TV, you know, and so, but there are certainly people that have been improving that you would hope would eventually get that opportunity. Like I thought, BFAB actually had a pretty decent showing on last week's edition of SmackDown, but I don't know that they would have trusted her to go out there and have that match one-on-one. And so maybe this offers somebody an opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise get, and I think that's a good thing in most cases. But I think most of it is probably playing into what you were saying, Wade. It gives them a lot of options of finishes, and it allows them to add big names to this thing without having it feel like they're losing one-on-one matches to an eventual winner that will never compete for that top level title, at least not in the foreseeable future. And so I think that's largely where this lands. But I understand, tournaments are often better when you have a lot of high profile singles matches leading to an ultimate conclusion. But I think it seemed like they wanted to get this tournament done in a relatively short period of time, but they wanted to include basically everyone on the SmackDown women's division in the process. And so the first round just ended up being triple threat matches.
All right, Sean, back to you.
Yeah, I just want to say, first, it's just fun to be on here again. Hopefully I can be on again a little bit more. Life's just been, like I said, been pretty busy in a good way. I mean, things have been good, but the women's war games, like I said, I'm not a fan, but if you're going to do it, at least try to make everybody have some brawls, make it feel like we want to see these guys go at it. And like I said, Tiffany, I just really hope they're on a good trajectory with her persona, because I just feel like she's in a weird place. She's got the money in the bank, but the stuff with Nia, with her and Nia, hasn't been the greatest to me. And again, I just think there's a star in her, and I want them to use it to the best the best that they can. So I hope they have a good thing going forward. So that's pretty much all I had, guys. Jake, but fun to talk to you guys, and hope to be on again soon.
Thanks. Good to see you, Sean. Maybe Rude Dog will show up again. It's been a while. Yeah, he's been in the chat. I don't know why maybe he ran out of T-shirts. That's my theory.
Yeah, really. It could be. Rude Dog, we miss you, man. Get on back here soon, man. Good to talk to you guys.
Yep. It's always. It's weird. I think about our Blog Talk days and going back 10 years. I listened to some of the 10 years ago shows we post, and there's callers. I'm like, we talk to them every week or most weeks for like 6 months or 6 years. And there's a final call, and you don't know it's final. You don't say goodbye, and then they just don't call again. And they're like, what happened? So I feel like there should not exit interviews, but I feel like if you're going to be on the show and then just go away, like, sometimes it's life events, health issues, job change, all kinds of things. But drop us an email. Let us know what happened to you. If you're listening to us and you're an old caller from our Blog Talk days, going back 15 years almost. We're going to be running some of our 15 years ago shows starting next month, by the way, because we're going to have our 15th anniversary of doing live call-in shows. I think we started in December 15 years ago. So we're going to be posting some of our 15 years ago shows, which is going to be, I think, a lot of fun. And yeah, let us know what you're up to if you're listening to this. Okay, let's go another caller here. We got Mike in Hershey who is ready to join us. Mike, good to see you again. Good to hear from you again. What's in your mind about SmackDown tonight?
What's going on, guys? Can you hear me good?
Yeah. Is that LA Knight on your shirt?
Dude, I got this shirt at like this I was doing some early Christmas shopping. Crazy thing. Me and my wife actually had the same day off, earlier this week, earlier this week, and we ended up at this discount store type place, and they had a bunch of WWE licenses.
Is it a knockoff or is it official?
No, it's real. It's real. It's definitely got the WWE tag, but I decided to put it on here. Yeah. Let me talk to you.
Well, hey, if we can't get Rude Dog, we got Mike.
Exactly. Well, Rude Dog, dude, that guy's closet is full for sure. But
yeah.
No, it's fun. So I decided to give a call tonight. I missed a lot of. I figured looking through the chat that a lot of the discussion was about the Bloodline segment, but I guess I wanted to ask you guys about the Jade Cargill segment. You talked about it. Sean touched on it. Great to see Sean, by the way. Big fan. Miss Sean. Glad he called in. But she looked very well placed across the hood of that car, right? I'm not saying it's quite 80s White Snake video, like across the hood of the car, but I could foresee in my mind, in a week, backstage footage of Jade smashing something through the windshield, laying on top of the car. I don't know. Maybe that's like the deceptive nature of the relationship between her and Bianca. What do you guys think? Do you think that is this a inside job, or do you think there's actually somebody going after Jade to kind of split them up? What do you think?
Standard Deviation earlier said, "Oh no, is Charlotte taking Jade's place and winning the U.S. title?" I don't think they're going to give a former world champion the U.S. title because that's a sign you're moving down. It creates basically a third world title, which I don't think they want. I think they want this to be a true secondary title. But Charlotte attacking Jade to knock her out is kind of intriguing. I don't know. Jake, your thoughts on what Mike brought up?
Yeah, I think you brought up an interesting point. There's really no indication as to how long she had been laying there before she was discovered. I guess it's even possible that Bianca did it to her before the match, right? And then had to play shocked when she was eventually discovered. But I think it could be Piper Niven who was going to be in that three-way match with her, or I guess there's still plenty of options as to how she ended up that way. I think maybe we're supposed to believe that one of the women who later sort of invaded during the women's tag match later from Raw, like Raquel or Liv or somebody in that War Games match, could have been responsible for it too. I guess nobody ever took credit for it one way or another. Nia was the only one who had an opportunity to confirm or deny, and she just deferred. So I think it's supposed to be a mystery, and maybe it's one they'll solve either on Raw or on SmackDown next week, heading into that War Games match on that Survivor Series.
Mike, what else for us?
I think you're caught on mute there, Mike. Sorry.
Oh, that was my fault. I heard some background noise. Mike, you were muted. Back to you, Mike. Sorry about that.
All good, Wade. What are the chances that this is an attempt by Jade that Jade did this to herself type thing? That was
I mean, the makeup of bruises on her face was a little suspicious. Felt a little over the top. Yeah, I mean, Jake, you throw out some possibilities. What do you think happens, and do you have any kind of expanded list of who this might have been, including Jade herself?
I like the Charlotte idea. I think Bianca's a possibility. Certainly Piper, who was in that that triple threat that was going to be for the U.S. title, is a possibility. I don't think they'd have Michin be involved since she's a fellow, I guess, babyface, so to speak. But doing it to herself is an option. I guess I'd love to hear what people's ideas are about, what she would gain from doing that to herself. What is her ultimate goal?
Well,
I don't know. Go ahead, Mike, if you got an answer.
Yeah, no, definitely, Jake. I mean, I think that was my thought actually, is that what she has to gain is that, first of all, I don't think Bianca winning the U.S. Women's Championship is actually that great of an idea from a booking perspective. She's more of a world championship, obviously, level. So that's a way to get her out of that. But front facing, public facing, I guess, if you will, not backstage booking, it's a way of, this is the divide. I mean, like, who's going to be, when Bianca and Jade eventually split, who's going to be the heel? Who's going to be the baby face? Who's going to, I think right now, personally, I think Bianca is more naturally the heel. However, if it were to be found out, like through some backstage footage, some, GTV type stuff that, that we would show maybe down the road, that, maybe Jade, it's, again, the way that Jade was perfectly splayed out across the hood of that car with, I mean, not to say that someone very powerful would have either had to have put her through the windshield of that car, because Jade's a very large human, right, for that women's division, or she would have had to have done it herself. So I think it adds a little bit of, and it's just, again, that's what we love about it, the mystery.
Or Mike, we're giving them too much credit, and they just did a cheesy pose and didn't mean for us to read into it, like the fake walls.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, definitely. But I mean, I like to think that it's a possibility that it gets Bianca out of that women's United States Championship possibility, and it also creates a divide that we can work up and through WrestleMania, where I think that's probably where we'll see like a Jade versus Bianca, maybe come together, which is, I think, the match that maybe most people want to see.
I'll address it. I think either can work as heels and either as baby faces. I want to see Bianca as a heel if I got to vote, but it's not like a strong preference, because it's not, I think she'd be a better heel than Jade. It's just, I want to see Bianca in a new role. I want to see her stop twirling the braid and having her just the way she talks. And it feels so repetitive and one-dimensional and not really grounded in who she actually is. And she clearly is this, on mainstream interviews, this grown woman who feels real, and her character feels like what somebody would do if they were trying to make fun of how one-dimensional pro wrestlers are, if they were in a bad movie pretending to be a pro wrestler. The little girls love her. I mean, I mean there's effectiveness to it, obviously, but like it's a criticism wrapped in a compliment. Like, I think she can be a much bigger star, showing more dimensions than just the rhythmic dancing, twirling, and the cadence of her promos. It's just, I never feel like it's a person talking. It feels like a cartoon, one-dimensional wrestling character. She plays it relatively well. I want to see more. I know there's more in there. So to me, I think maybe heel turn would do it. Now, maybe Jade turning on her would bring that out on a babyface side. We're seeing more of an edge to Montez Ford and Dawkins. So maybe I want to see it. I don't know if they are strongly opposed to it. I don't recall either of them saying they're strongly opposed to being an on-air act. But a heel threesome of Street Profits and Bianca, I'd be for that, because I feel similar about Montez Ford too, and his, kind of over-the-top cartoonish facial expressions and sing-song promos and dancing. Let's see some layers and some depth, and kind of have them grow into adult roles. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'd be all for Bianca taking on, a second and a third dimension would be great at this point. I think she's been kind of penciled in as a caricature for several years now. And I go back to her NXT run as a heel, and I saw real promise there. There was a lot to like about her presentation in NXT as a heel. And so I think they could look to recreate some of that. I don't know if she's like John Cena or Cody Rhodes, in the sense that they're very resistant to the idea of turning heel, and they feel an obligation to their young fans to maintain a specific image. And, I understand, the weight of that responsibility. But I would certainly enjoy watching her embrace the role. And I think, Ford has been much more interesting since he's taken on this new attitude and persona over the last couple of weeks too. And so I wouldn't be opposed to them coming together as an act. I wouldn't be opposed to them being heels separately, away from each other. I mean, I could get behind either one. And, when they get to the Jade and Bianca split, I think there's plenty of opportunity for Bianca to go in the direction of being a heel, and I think Jade is more natural as a as a babyface than Bianca feels right now. I think Jade just has that immediate impressive presentation where you're like, okay, obviously there's something to like here. I do wonder though, are they gonna? They could present it as like one of the NXT call ups. They've had like Lash Legend and going after the tag titles. And so there's plenty to think about from that perspective too. Is a call up going to be involved? I do wonder if it's related to them realizing that there's a good possibility that Jade would be asked to do too much in a War Games match, and they want to avoid that, and so they're just creating a way to pull her out of that scenario.
Mike, anything else for us?
The only other thing I had was regarding just the possibility of. I just want to hear what you guys thought about Becky Lynch coming back to WWE. A lot of reports this week making news. Do you think that's going to be something that we're going to see with this Netflix thing, or do you think we'll see that with Royal Rumble coming up? And guys, as always, appreciate the time. Love the entertainment. Thanks again.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Mike. Always good hearing from you. Jake, Becky Lynch, I mean, she's taking time off. It makes sense. She's got young kids, put in a lot of time, has plenty of money. Her last stint wasn't quite clicking. Maybe it was time for some reflection, some introspection on what to do. But the timing couldn't be better if she goes away. And ultimately, the plan is for her to return, and always was, to have it make a big splash on one of the first Netflix shows. So I don't know. What do you make of the rumors, the reports, and the timing and the impact that she could have? And if she needs to complicate my question to you and layer, does she need to come back different? And try to make something different, something work, because what she was doing wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't great in terms of crowd response. Jake.
Yeah, no, it certainly wasn't, the anything in comparison to that original run where she, became the man character and really exploded into, really being one of the most popular acts in the country, regardless of whether it was a male or female performer. But she's shown a willingness to experiment with her character. She came back, after giving birth and experimented as a heel for a while and made that work, even when people didn't initially take to it. And then, they didn't really succeed in turning her back babyface in the same way that they wanted to. So I think the door is wide open for her to take, whatever approach that she wants or the company needs to take her in. I think she's spoken repeatedly about wanting to cement her legacy as somebody who helped the next generation get over the hump and turn into stars. And so, with all of those, really compelling NXT talents who have suddenly found themselves down there, I would not be shocked if she took a lot of pride in helping them get to the next level. And I think that may be her focus when she comes back.
All right, very good. Thanks again, Mike. We'll talk to you soon. All right, let's take one more caller here, then we'll wrap up with maybe an email and some chats that I starred that we want to sneak in. Rivers, you are up, audio-only caller. How's it going? What's on your mind about SmackDown? Good to hear from you.
I'm good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Great.
Cool. I have a couple of very pedantic, boring, linguistic things I noticed about the show.
Yeah,
so we'll start
I love
with
this.
them.
Caller of the day.
Well, first of all, this isn't really linguistic, but I liked that Cole, as soon as the premise was set of Roman having to acknowledge Solo, it went to Cole, and Cole said something along the lines of, "We know he's not going to do that." And I liked that because that is exactly what I assume everyone was thinking. I think sometimes Cole can be a bit of a shill. And you're like, Cole, this isn't the greatest match ever. Cole, that isn't good. I like that bit of honesty. And we were able to move on with, we acknowledge he's not going to do it. Now let's see what happens. The other thing is you rarely get mention of in-ring deaths in wrestling. There was 2 tonight, which I thought was interesting. Cody mentioned that the pile driver is not only banned, but can cost you your life. And also Solo to Roman and the rest of the bloodline at the end said if you don't join us, you will die where you stand. So I thought that's interesting. You rarely get it, and we got 2 tonight.
My hunch is
Cody.
Cody probably wasn't authorized. I don't know. I don't think that would be in the script for him to like say. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I can imagine Cody's sort of like getting a little wrapped up in the moment. I think Solo's saying it's saying I'm going to kill you in our match because that's how I'm going to get revenge. It's so over the top and stupid, and it's like, just be more sophisticated and keep things realistic. But I think that what Solo said came across very just more symbolic, that you're gonna, if you don't join us, the remnants of the OG bloodline just will die in the vine. There's just, you don't have any friends. Right. We're dominant. And so to me, it's not like your heart stops beating and you're pronounced dead. It's more your power, everything you've built is going to die. So I didn't see that. I mean, it's nuanced, but it's sort of like my bitch-o-meter. It's like there's use of the word bitch that like works with a character, but it's when you punctuate an insult or a threat with that word because you think you're super cool, and it just comes across like a fourth grader using a naughty word, and then it's overdone. And so it even loses more when everybody's doing it. Well, if she gets to say it, I get to say it. If he gets to say it, I get to say it. I don't want a bunch of people promising to kill each other in the ring, but I think Cody maybe winging it a bit, over stating that the pile driver is so dangerous. I wouldn't go there, but it just doesn't feel like he's promising to kill someone. It's just an exaggeration of the effect of it. And then Solo, it seemed more symbolic. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think your take on the Solo thing is accurate. I think Cody was kind of punctuating on his comments that the pile driver is a career-ending move. You're basically ending somebody's life in wrestling, so to speak. It didn't feel like I think it was Scott Hall on a Torch Talk with you all those years ago who talked about how you can't you can't say you're going to murder somebody because it's just something you can never pay off. It makes you sound like an idiot. And I think that applies.
By the way, Jake, when I come across that clip, because we're running the Scott Hall Torch Talk for our VIP members now, the audio version of it, and it's just it's spread out because we pasted the release of the audio with the newsletter it was transcribed in. When I get to that part, I don't think it's run yet. I'm going to create a clip, I'm going to put it on file, and we're going to play it every time the reference comes up because he said it so well, as only Scott Hall could. Okay, Jake, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm clearly going to butcher whatever Scott had to say at the time, but I think the general concept is saying it explicitly is a bad idea, and maybe using it metaphorically you can get away with at times. But yeah, because I would think the general rule of we don't talk about murder is a good idea. But if you want to use it in a symbolic sense, then you could probably get away with it. But I wouldn't make it a habit kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, Rivers. What else?
My third linguistic question is: do you guys know the tagline for the Netflix commercial for the new Raw? It is, "You can't fake this." And I may be overthinking this, and almost certainly am, but that doesn't strike me as a line someone from the wrestling industry would use. It makes sense totally to be from an ad exec, because all they would know is, oh, wrestling's that fake thing. Oh, fake, I can play off that. Oh, you can't fake this. And I just know that fake is not a word that likes to be used in pro wrestling. It's kind of diminishing. Is that a sign of anything? Totally, probably not. It's just, an ad. It's some ad exec at Netflix thought of it. But it struck me as not written by a wrestling guy.
I think that's an astute observation. Another one here on the show from someone. It's an eye roll. I mean, it comes across as somebody who isn't immersed in wrestling or ought not to have any power on how to market wrestling. I mean, yeah, it's an eye roll, Jake. We can't fake this. Well, it's like, would you say that about every other form of scripted entertainment? I mean, it's just like, what is that? No one cares. Like, what, thou doth protest too much about something no one's even thinking about. So why draw attention to it, especially when by the conventional use of the word wrestling is fake. So you're saying it's not, even though it is in the way that you're using it, which is a dated way to refer to wrestling because no one thinks about that anymore. Jake.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fake. Well, clearly you are faking it, right? I mean, that's the whole point of the industry. So, but I'd have to go back and watch it again. I remember that being said, but I thought it was in the context of them visually sort of showing you fans being invested in the product. And I think it was more.
I thought
Go ahead,
that
Rivers.
too. I thought that too, and that would make sense, as in you can't fake the emotion. But I believe as soon as you can't fake this comes up, it has someone going through a table, and then it focuses on like athleticism. So
and even if it is a shot of the crowd, the implication is the moves might be fake, but the crowd emotions aren't. And it's like, who cares? Like, you've already got real crowd emotions. We're not contesting the emotions of the crowd isn't real. So why? It's like if I'm at a I'll use a restaurant analogy. If I'm at a restaurant, someone brings me a plate of food and the server goes, I did not spit in this. I'm like, I wasn't thinking you were. Why are you bringing that up? Now I'm nervous. Like, no one's watching the fans thinking they're faking their emotions. So you don't need to tell us, like, that's an inferiority complex that WWE doesn't need to have. Nobody in WWE has. They're not like, oh God, we're selling out crowds in stadiums. We're doing record revenue. We got this Netflix deal. We're more international than ever. But, oh man, some people think the crowd responses are as fake as the moves in the ring. Maybe we need to run an ad campaign pushing back on that. It's not a thing. So, yeah.
We absolutely did not heat this up in the microwave. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. This you're at Olive Garden. This bread was not poured from another basket that sat out for a half hour in front of people who were fingering it. That's not what we're giving you. It's like, stop it. We weren't thinking that, but now we are. Anyway. And by the way, WWE does fake crowd noise sometimes. So I mean that like they shouldn't even be drawing attention to that because now they're hypocrites too. Go ahead, Rivers.
I'm saying I'm looking at the chat. Some people are saying, well, like it is fake, and that's how people describe it outside of wrestling, and that's true. But my impression is that fake is also kind of demeaning in a way and doesn't give the performers the real credit. So like choreographed or something like that is more likely to be used than the word fake in wrestling, right? Yeah, that's just why I thought fake particularly is a kind of could be seen as derogatory.
Yeah, it's a dead term. I mean, it just doesn't. Yeah. I mean, I mean, Nick Aldis is old school enough that in a promo he's like talking about, oh yeah, the RKO was improvised with Randy Orton, who was sort of called on the spot. It wasn't planned, and it's like the new work is to act like something was unplanned when it was, and so I don't even know what to believe. In the context of it, it sounded legit, but when I hear someone going, this part was real and it wasn't planned, I'm like, who cares? It doesn't matter to me whether you winged it or it was planned ahead of time. It's just, what's the effect? Did it work? Did it help sell tickets? Did it help get characters over to the crowd react? But he's like, but I feel weird talking about it. I'm old school enough that I don't like being on record. It's like there are remnants of wrestlers who don't want to open the book, drop pull the camera back, reveal the fourth wall, whatever, break the fourth wall. There's still some of that, but it's just they don't feel comfortable going into detail on it. It doesn't mean that they want to push back on it being a thing. So anyway,
let's two more things and I'll let you go. First one is Carmelo versus Cody. I assume Carmelo was picked for a reason that will kind of progress both their storylines. How do you guys see that going? I'm assuming Carmelo gets a win somehow, probably involving Kevin Owens. I don't know. And the last thing is, I'm in Los Angeles. So today I looked at tickets for the first show on Netflix because it seems like it's going to be a good show. Yeah. I think I found cheaper ones since, but when I checked, there was not one under $300. And I logged in like in the queue when it started. So it was like, living in LA, I can usually get cheap, obscured view tickets, whatever, and I can go and it's pretty good. But like, I would have to spend like $1,000 to take me and like my wife and like a couple of friends or something. Insane prices. Anyway, so Carmelo, that's my main question. I'll let you guys go. You have a good night.
It is crazy what they're charging for tickets now, Jake. I mean, if you can charge it and you get away with it and people pay it, I mean, that's capitalism. That's business. But it's a lot. And I mean, they'll adjust when the demand isn't there and the prices will probably come down. I'm kind of have sticker shock over it, to be honest. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, I can't be, if they get it, I can't be critical. I mean, that people are willing to pay for that experience. It feels wild to me. I don't know if they sold out cheaper seats right away, and then that's why there's none below 300 or what. But yeah, I mean, TVs are big and bright, and sound bars sound great, and couches at home are comfortable, and the fridge is right behind you. You don't pay $18 for a soda or whatever it is in some of these. I mean, I'm not discouraging people from leaving the house. I've been to lots and lots and lots of wrestling shows, and I cherish those memories, and I'll have more of them. So I think people should leave the house and go, be part of something. But I don't blame people for not wanting to spend $1,000 for, a family of 3 to go to a WWE live event, either if it doesn't fit their budget or if they just don't. They want to, you put that $1,000 in the bank now, can buy a car, 20 years from now. So if you invest it decently. So, you want to think about, but anyway, Jake, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the ticket prices are, egregious, really. I mean, when you look at where they were, just a couple of years ago, but I think they price it to maximize whatever the market will bear, right? Like, and I think the reseller effect has certainly amplified what people are willing to pay for tickets over time. Yeah. So I think the ticketing, ticket masters of the world and some of these those popular shows are just starting to increase the base price because they know they're going to end up at 50% higher or 100% higher anyway down at some point in the future. So it's unfortunate, but it's just the nature of being a hot ticket, and WWE has been getting close to near sellouts at these really high prices for well over a year now.
I just looked it up, by the way. There are seats for $204 right now showing up. So 300. Yeah, I don't know. It's middle of the top section for $200, which it's weird to say, but like $204 feels in today's entertainment environment not something to be too like. 300 just feels like crazy if that's the lowest price ticket. But having some tickets for a little over 200. I mean, it's a lot, but it feels, for whatever reason, to my senses, it feels more reasonable. It's still a lot, though. I mean, I remember going to NHL games and deciding, do I want to spend $20 to sit in the front row by the hockey boards, or do I want to spend $5 to sit in the second row of the lower deck, or the second row of the upper deck, which the Met Sports Center was a great seat because they didn't have luxury suites. I mean, I've been going to sporting events for long enough. I remember when $20 felt like, felt like the expensive ticket. So, it's crazy.
As technology and home theater have improved, it's become even harder to justify over time.
That's what I said about the big TV and the soundbar and the couch. It's like it's NFL. The NFL. I mean, I was season ticket holder for years for the Vikings during the whole Randy Moss, Dante Culpepper, Cunningham, Robert Smith. We Jason Paul and I and some friends had tickets. We sat in the last row of the stadium of the Metrodome and had a blast. And it was a fun experience. And I'll say this: there are times I'm watching football or basketball, I'm like, I wish I could have seen what was happening outside of what the director chose to show me. For sure, there's football. You really experience a game different when you can see the whole field live and you see the plays develop. Basketball, they're often showing a replay of the close-up of the person who scored and you miss an inbound steal. I get driven nuts by some director choices but for the most part, it's a really good experience now to watch it on TV, and there's so much on TV. But I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna tell someone to not spend it if it's an experience they want. Pro wrestling shows live are better than they used to be because of the big arenas. If you go to a big arena with the big screens and I still remember when they debuted after the pandemic, they debuted that big entry stage with a big screen. I still remember I think Rey Mysterio was the first one to come out at Target Center, and it was just this immersive, bright, like with a good sound system. I mean, you really feel it. You experience it beyond just watching the ring. So, I mean, yes, TVs are better, but the live experience, especially at a big show with a packed stadium, part of why WWE can charge so much, Jake, is because all the fans make it this gigantic party, and it's what we keep hoping. I mean, it's what I said AEW shouldn't do Collision because it's going to water down their live attendance, and live attendance was their secret weapon. Was that enthusiasm in big crowds, and it's so watered down now. It's harder to charge a lot of money when you just feel like you're in a building that's 1/5 full that most people don't want to be at.
Unfortunate, but true, yeah, for AEW. But I think the the live experience is good. It's just, with inflation harming everybody's bottom line from it's like, do I want to go to this WWE show or do I want to be able to buy groceries for the next 2 or 3 weeks? It becomes a difficult bit of calculus for a lot of people who don't make a ton of money.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, make good choices, people. I by the way, I don't think if you put $1,000 in a really good investment, it's probably gonna be worth like $8,000 in 20 years. So it's not gonna be a very nice car, but you could buy a decent used car for $1,000 20 years from now. But if you want a really nice car, you probably want to save $5,000 and wait 20 years. All right. Just want to correct that. I don't want someone in 20 years yelling at me like I put $1,000 in a CD and I can't buy anything but this crap used car. All right. Danny DeCito is with us. Danny, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you well.
Yeah.
What's up?
Okay, good. I had a million things to talk about, but Wade, I didn't realize you were going to be going short. I thought you'd be going long tonight, given the events. And so, sorry for coming in late. I'm going to be quick.
Oh no, I wasn't saying we're going short. I mean, the emails are long.
Oh,
we got
okay.
more chats to get to. Yeah, I'm not trying to rush out of here.
Oh, okay.
My dog just barged
because
in
you
and wants attention from me, so he wants me to end the show, but.
All right. No, I because I heard you say, there's one more caller, so I was like, he wants to get.
Oh, there's only one more caller on hold. You hadn't called up yet, so.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Then I can just run down the 35 minutes of. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but I'm gonna try to cut to the chase. I always do, so I'll be quick. First of all, responding to your response to my Punk comment earlier about his waning crowd reactions.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that he's not getting waning crowd reactions, and I also am fully cognizant of the fact that when he's having a surprise like this, he's going to get chance. What I meant is that like if it was really evidence like what we've seen over the past several months, what happened with Drew, where people were on Drew's side somewhat, like it's not that big of a deal going forward in terms of the potential heel turn, because he literally was standing in the ring with Roman Reigns, and like you didn't hear something like you might have heard in the past, or even like what happened with him sometimes in AEW, like you've talked about where MGF got the chance when they were in Chicago. Like you didn't hear dueling OTC CM Punk chants. You didn't hear like a smattering of OTC chants drowned out by CM Punk chants. All I meant was that like, if he does turn heel, it's because of the storyline. And like, they didn't expedite this. I don't think, in my opinion, they didn't expedite this because, Punk's losing the crowd now. So we gotta fast forward this thing 3 months or something. You understand what I mean?
You're on mute, Wade. Sorry.
I think that makes sense. It's a good clarification of what you meant. Yeah,
just want to make sure.
Makes sense.
I mean, always in the chat, it's very difficult with the limited characters to like really hash out the actual argument you're trying to make.
Just if I ever misinterpret someone's chat, just don't do all caps except for this. Go, that's not what I meant, Wade. Here's what I meant, and then say what you meant. If I ever misinterpret or take something out of context, do all caps. I'll notice it, and I'll be sure to frame it correctly. Obviously, I do my sincere best to not misrepresent.
And this was the rare time where I actually agreed with everything you were saying. Like you
rare time, wow.
Well, I meant like in terms of if I were to do an all caps kind of thing, like you're saying, like I was agreeing with you. I just was like, they're not understanding what I really meant because I didn't articulate it myself well.
Yeah.
All right. Second thing, somebody brought up the KO and Cody segment, which like I think is completely flown under the radar on this show. Mm-hmm. That was one of the best promo segments from both of those guys, like in a while for me. I mean, I know KO did the whole pile driving on Orton, and like the whole story's been great. Don't get me wrong, but the actual promo segment was great. And I think one of the things that made it great, which I don't think anybody's mentioned so far tonight, is that I can't remember the last time you had a main event promo segment like this, where the guys are yelling at each other back and forth. And like back in the day when Vince was booking, when things were bad, or let's say maybe you might watch on Wednesdays, you'll hear a lot of guys yelling at each other back and forth as if this is like a blood feud, when it's just some, mid-card thing, and they resort to yelling. Whereas this was like two guys that really seemed to just be fed up with each other. And
Danny, there was a moment where Cody just, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he's like, that's enough. And Kevin was done talking. It wasn't like he interrupted him, but it was like, that's enough from you. And he was intense, and it sort of felt like I did everything I could to bite my tongue to let you get to the end, but I feel triggered. I got to get this out. And yeah, it struck me as like feeling natural. Like Cody's thinking, I'm gonna listen to what you're saying. I want to give you a chance to make your case, but the more time goes on, the more I feel you're burying yourself while you're trying to defend yourself. And then Cody's reactions felt genuine, and it didn't feel as scripted and rote and formulaic as sometimes the you talk then I talk, you talk then I talk. It sort of felt like Cody's going to let him have his say, but a lot is building up inside of him, and as soon as there's a pause, Cody's going to jump in. Cody's going to jump in. Standard deviation, by the way, real quick, said I didn't like that part of Cody's promo because he didn't address anything KO said. He changed the topic back to KO's actions instead. So, I
didn't like that either. I didn't like his I forget. I think it was Sean earlier mentioned how he had Cody had to get the last word. Mm-hmm. I thought that was just let's end scene with KO walking off and completely ignoring Cody, turning his back on him literally and walking off, and that's just let's cut to commercial. But so I agree with that. But I just meant more from a booking perspective, where when you do things over and over and over and over again, where everybody's always yelling at each other in a promo, it makes it seem like it doesn't matter when it really does matter when people are yelling at each other. And I think that with Triple H, and this is what I'm segueing into my next point, is he does things judiciously. I'm putting aside adding an extra belt, which Todd is not very happy about. But he like the pile driver. Nobody does a pile driver. He makes sure that the one place where you're going to do the pile driver is where it matters. And I think in this feud, this matters. These guys really do seem, in storyline that they hate each other, or they're fed up with each other, at least love, hate, let's say. And it mattered to go out there and yell at the top of your lungs. Kevin Owens was popping a blood vessel in his neck practically with his promo. Yeah. So I just thought that was really a deft touch in terms of attention to detail of not doing things so often that they lose their effect on the crowd or on the audience,
Yep. Yeah. Pick your spots to get that intense, and it means more. Jake, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Jake, anything you want to add to that? Can you hear me? I think Jake's frozen.
Yeah,
there he is.
I guess.
Yep.
Sorry about that. It's interesting to think about, because I think a lot of people interpret Cody as being disingenuous sometimes, because there is a bit of awkwardness to him, and he has that theater kid try hard approach to trying to get around it. Yeah. And I think that comes across as him as being a bit, over the top and maybe insincere. Yeah, I think that's a good, pretentious maybe sometimes too.
Yeah.
And so but I think that's legitimately him and just who he is. I think it's unnatural to other people, but that's just who he is. That's how he comes across.
Cody puts on a suit to go to the garage, to pick something up and then go back in his house. I mean, in case a neighbor sees him. I mean, not really, but yeah. I mean, if he's got to pick up some Tylenol, he dresses up nicely and sure. for a quick errand. That's what you feel. That's the vibe you get from him. But anyway,
absolutely. But I think they both played the role well. I think too often we see when wrestlers yell at each other, and through different eras it's been different reasons. In the 80s it was a lot of yelling because everybody was on cocaine, and then in the 90s it was just who was going to be who could be the most angry, and now now we try to be a little bit more modulated, and the acting is a bit better, and so it feels a bit more in control, and I think they found a nice Go ahead.
Jake, Dolph Ziggler no one thought of yelling. Let me do it all the time. It's like, no, everybody thought of yelling. They just don't want to annoy everybody and drive people away. It's like, Dolph,
Right.
I mean, he's very talented, but someone should have said, yelling isn't something no one else thought of. It's something most people think better of than to do every single time, as if that makes their promo twice as good if they're twice as loud. Samoa Joe is one of my favorite promos, but my favorite promos is when he's talks softly and intensely, not when he's frothing and yelling. And he did that too often, because I want, when he does yell, for it to really matter. So yeah, I mean, Jake Roberts was the best. He was the guy you cared what he said because he wasn't yelling. The spoiler was great. I mean, he turned things. Anyway, Jerry Lawler, when he yelled,
absolutely.
And when he was a wrestler in the '80s, the main eventer, he was just very matter of fact, playing off of Lance Russell and just very everyman. But then, oh man, if he got intense, raised his voice even a little bit to like 20% of what Dolph was at normal, you're like, oh, Jerry's really mad. So yeah, this plays into what you're saying, Danny. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I think there's something to respecting the value of words and the economy of words. It's and how you deliver them. It's all very important for how the audience perceives you. And I think with Kevin and Cody tonight, it's not this often that we've seen them both get this out of control and angry. Oh, there's the Doge.
Needs a little attention, yeah.
And so I think tonight's promo hit the right notes for me. I understand why some people don't quite interface with Cody Rhodes and how he approaches his speech pattern sometimes, because he does have that sort of facade about him that's hard to penetrate. But I really enjoyed what KO did specifically here. I thought he hit all the right notes and delivered well.
Yeah. All right. Gave my dog some attention there. Hopefully it buys me 5 minutes. He's sitting and staring at me. He wants food and more attention. All right, sorry, Jake. I didn't mean to distract from your
no
voice,
worries. You can't win against the dog. It's just the way it is.
Yep. All right, I gotta work. He knows that phrase. I gotta work. Go lay down. All right, Danny, back to you.
Wade, thank you for bringing up the Dolph Ziggler promos, because that's exactly what I was talking about back in the Vince days, where everything was shouting, and which means nothing matters when So thank you for that. The other thing, since you brought it up, I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you brought it up, a bit of frivolity that I was going to talk about was that Owens wore a Dusty shirt, then he wore a Cowboy Bob Orton shirt, and then tonight he's wearing a tuxedo shirt. So does that mean that there's descendants of either Mean Gene Okerlund or Bob Uecker that are going to be showing up in this feud at some point?
I don't know who would be most known for tuxedos. I don't even think of Gene Okerlund. I think of Gene Okerlund's old AWA red vest, Jake.
I thought he was mocking the
right, but it's
Cody
WWF.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Danny, Jake is right. He was mocking the politician fancy suit.
No, I know, and I know that's what that.
Yeah.
Yes. You're right. I know that's actually what it was, but when I saw it, I thought to myself, well, the pattern is that he's doing the fathers of the people. So are there descendants of Mean Gene or Bob Uecker that I don't know about in the industry right now? But the next thing, kind of piggybacking off the yelling stuff, is another detail that I don't know if anybody picked up on, but it, again, just completely goes against the way Vince used to do things and the way things are done on Wednesday night, is that with Heyman coming out at the end, it actually proved that people on the show have access to televisions that they can watch, and they know what happens on the previous week's show. He didn't need to have the phone call to know what was going on with Roman. And I back in the day, and on AEW, and I'm not trying to crap on AEW here, but it's just, this is the things they need to fix for me to go back to loving them like I used to. It's the Adam Cole and MJF stuff last year, things would happen on the show, and then somebody would just show up, and it would almost be like they don't have access to television. They were in a bunker for 7 days and don't know what happened. And like, I like the fact that Heyman, showed up. He didn't need the call from Roman. He didn't need the call from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually watching the show and knew exactly what happened. And this was his choice to intervene now. And it's just one of those pet peeves of mine, where it just seems sometimes when the booking is bad, whatever company it is, that like, don't these guys watch the show when they're not on the show? CM Punk knew exactly what Drew McIntyre was saying for weeks and months, even if he wasn't on the show.
Yeah, I got you.
So I thought that was a nice detail.
I do think I do think they should do a reminder of early this summer, the exchange Paul Heyman and Punk had. This is sort of a separate point, but it's really, when you brought up like video packages or catching people up, I think they should remind fans of
definitely,
back the exchange back in June on SmackDown where it was in Chicago, and Heyman appeared for with Punk and said, "Oh, I heard you're going to be in town," and then Heyman looked into Punk's eyes and said, "Take me with you," and it felt kind of like a sort of throwaway line special for Chicago. It's not part of canon. It's just, I'm scared. This is terrible. What's happening with the bloodline? Your life has to be better than mine right now. And it could have just been that and never revisited. But now there's this, it planted a seed in what felt like kind of a throwaway situation that actually, if they want to incorporate that into a video package at Survivor Series itself or on Raw or SmackDown next week, they can. And again, it just depends on if they want it emphasized as part of canon, or if they just are going to kind of leave that not in the dustbin, but sort of like, it was just that cute little thing we did in Chicago. It wasn't necessarily portending what you saw tonight or what you saw Friday night on SmackDown. But it did. I think even if a lot of fans aren't really thinking overtly about that moment, in the back of their mind, it was a smart thing to do if it was master plan, Jake, that for people who didn't know about the Heyman Punk history, or, it wasn't a huge part of Punk's history, it wasn't a huge part of on air wise. For most fans, I don't think Punk and Heyman are inseparable. I don't think they're Heenan and Bockwinkel. I don't think, it's like, so having that little moment was a way to remind people of it. The Hall of Fame speech was a way to remind people of it. So it's just in the back of their mind. It doesn't feel like it's out of nowhere or something plucked from a dozen years ago. It's something more current that still is alive. So I wonder if they'll incorporate that. The Hall of Fame segment, the June SmackDown segment in Chicago. Jake, your thoughts on that?
I think they should. If you go back to that June segment, I'm pretty sure Paul Heyman asked CM Punk for a favor and then never got a chance to ask what it was, or got to say what it was. So,
Punk asked Heyman what the favors he wanted, and when he wanted to ask him if he does him a favor, and take me with you is one of them. So then, are you saying there's a return favor that we don't know?
I'm assuming so. Like it doesn't. Their relationship does seem fairly transactional, and so I would assume that they don't just do things out of the goodness of their heart for each other. It's got to be beneficial in both directions. But I think the idea of them planting the seeds for this, back in at the Hall of Fame, the making sure that you were aware of the relationship, and then introducing Punk to the mix when he got to see Solo terrorizing Heyman and maybe, getting an opinion of that whole situation. It certainly pays off now that, they can roll back to that and add some color to it. But I think the long-term vision for this, I don't know if Heyman and Punk are going to be together on television on a weekly basis for the long term. They could go in a completely different direction than I expect. But I think they've done a nice job of painting in the corners, so to speak, where they at least gave people who may have been unfamiliar with that long relationship a little bit of background before they came out and just kind of randomly introduced this story here.
Yep. Well put. Danny, anything else quick you want to bring up? We're past 2 hours. I don't want to rush you, but I do want to wrap up soon here.
No, actually, this is why you're a professional broadcaster, Wade. Because you just segued into my next thing.
Awesome.
Perfectly. Easter eggs.
That's what broadcasters do. They read minds and jump ahead of their callers.
Exactly. No, but you could feel it. You could feel it coming. No, but Easter eggs. So like you just talked about one, which I have no doubt they're going to put in a package at some point to when they tell the story, whenever that pay-per-view match happens. I'm sorry, PLE, no pay-per-view match happens. The last thing, and then I got just one more quick question. Actually, the last thing is about Heyman, and it is about whether or not, because I don't know if you caught this at the end of the show, Punk and Roman were bantering back and forth without mics.
Yeah.
And Heyman was in the background, and they framed Roman on the left, Punk on the right, Heyman in the background. And what they were actually talking about, if you could read lips, was that Punk was saying, I'm only here because of him. I'm a Heyman guy, basically. And then Roman said, he's my wise man. And so what I'm wondering is if that's an Easter egg for the fact that Heyman eventually is not going to side with either of them. And that what this is going to turn into is Heyman going back to Brock, who was his original Heyman guy. So what are your thoughts on that?
I thought Punk was a little much to add at this point because they had so much to work with. You had Lesnar. It's way too much. I think Heyman is a step backwards, honestly, for Heyman to be with Lesnar. Let's set aside all the...
Oh, no. I don't mean... Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't mean anytime soon. I mean like way down the road so that's an Easter egg that they can put in that package way down the road.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think Heyman needs Lesnar. Need is too strong a word. I mean, Brock's 47 years old. He has more money than he wants. He doesn't like to travel. He just wants to hang out at his farm. When he's going to come in public again, there's going to be a different crowd reaction that Brock's not going to want. It puts WWE in an awkward position of a guy who might not react well to someone who's taunting him. And you have Braun Breaker and Punk and Jacob Fatu. I mean, you just have so many people for Heyman to elevate. I personally, I don't need to ever see Brock Lesnar again to feel like we didn't get the full Brock Lesnar experience. And frankly, a lot of the Brock Lesnar matches and that we saw on the cowboy hat, shucks, Brock. I mean, it was, especially some of the matches, they were just so either they're really quick or really formulaic, and it just felt like he sort of wasn't going to give us top line performances anymore. So my answer is I hope not, and I also don't think so. I want to see Heyman work with new people, and for a number of reasons, I don't need to see Lesnar again on WWE TV. Honestly, like even one more time, like I'm totally fine if we don't see him again, even regardless of all the texting and stuff like that with Vince. Jake, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think there's, part of Lesnar at this point that just feels kind of radioactive. Like, I don't know why the company would want to introduce that into the mix unless they were absolutely desperate to do so. And
that's part of it.
And I think
things are going well. Why do it? You don't need it. It's like the free agent signing out a football team who's just a head case in a locker room cancer. Oh, but we really need a cornerback. Like WWE isn't in that position. Right.
Yeah, they have plenty of people that are either ready to go or on the verge of being ready to go to bring in.
Yep. Your internet was a little choppy, Jake.
But I think the long-term view, if he brings to the table, is I apologize. Sorry about that. The long-term view, if you're looking to bring in sorry about that. Am I back or not?
Yeah, you're good. Okay, go ahead, Jake.
Perfect. Yeah. If you're looking at the long term, I think you want to create new people that are attached to Paul Heyman if he's going to be around as a manager for the long term. So whether it's Braun Breaker or Jacob Fatu that you mentioned, I think it would be better for them and better for Heyman and better for the company long term to have him bring other people up to that level to where they can compete with the Brock or with the Cody Rhodeses and the CM Punks and the Roman Reigns of the world. I don't think you need to continually go back to Brock Lesnar. I think his best work is well behind him, and I don't even know that he would be motivated to do it anymore.
And Brock was amazing. I mean, like one of the most gifted, like phenomenal workers and characters he had a really good run. I mean, whatever, artists love the artist or love the art, not the artist. You can say that about Brock with some stuff that came out. You can say that wasn't that big of a, however you want to frame that stuff. It's just factually speaking, Brock brought a ton of top level performances. Some of the best performances were when he said nothing. He was just reacting to Heyman, but he did so brilliantly, and the little smirks and the little nods and he was a natural. He didn't like a lot of the aspects of pro wrestling, the travel and being around people. He didn't like, but man, he took to the art form really well. I'm not bashing him. He's had the story arc of Brock's career is written. Anything else just feels like it's going to pull it down and be staying around too long. Denny, thanks. Appreciate all the topics in the call.
I just to lay my cards on the table. I actually agree 100% with everything you guys just said. I was just laying a trap there, kind of. I think he's too toxic. I think it's a new corporate environment there. I think there's no, like Wade, you said, there's no reason to bring, like, everything's going well. Why do it? So yeah, 100% agree. And just real quick, and then I'm done. Does anybody know if Punk actually put the one up? Because they went off the air as everybody was turning to do it. And I was just wondering, Easter egg wise, if like he didn't do it, or maybe he like did what he always does, where he like just runs away from the ring and leaves really quickly when the cameras go off. Because Bronson Reed did put up the one when he was with the Bloodline 2.0. So I don't know if that information's even out there after the show, if you've heard anything or not. And that was it.
Jake, did you see anything? We went on the air right after SmackDown, so
I did not, but I would be surprised if he did. I'll put it that way.
So me too. And with that, good night, guys, from frigid 59-degree Miami.
Yeah, well, if you're used to Miami weather,
have a good one.
Thanks, appreciate it. By the way, I haven't done this a lot, and I should do it more often because it would kind of miss having our on-site correspondence. So if you attend Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown in person and you're attending, let me know, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. I want to, get back into having that on occasion on the show. And don't think we have to do it every single week. So, but I just haven't asked for it lately. We're not getting people noting it. So that's a thing we'd like to do. Let's get back to doing it. If you can afford to go to these shows and you're attending, get your money's worth by also sharing your experience with all of our viewers and listeners. wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Okay. I'm not going to get to all the chat room comments. If anybody wants to sneak a comment in, you'll have to super chat it and get my attention that way. I will read just some comments from Chris Johnson, who's a good emailer, and we'll likely wrap up there, Jake. We're running long here, but a big show. I think we're going to have, people are going to be interested in hearing people talk about this show. So thanks for people who chose us. So Chris Johnson from Tyler, Texas says, the more I see a Solo in this role, the more I like it. Jake, how's Solo doing? Was he good this week?
I think Solo is improving steadily. I don't know if I would, I don't think I would trust him as a mainstream singles act to carry important segments. But I think in this sort of ensemble role that he's playing as a part of the Bloodline, he feels like he's growing into it. And I think the association with a lot of these other big time acts, Roman Reigns, obviously Paul Heyman is going to be involved in this. The Usos, Sami Zayn, it makes him more appealing as a character. So I would give Solo, I guess a slight thumbs up for being much better than he was 3 or 6 months ago.
All right, the crowd loves Chelsea Green. She may be my favorite woman on the roster. Didn't love the match or the finish though. But yeah, Chelsea's. She stands out. I'm trying to think I think it's a safe say. She stands out as a distinct character. There's not a lot of interchangeability with her, and no one's going to watch a Chelsea Green segment and 2 days later go, oh, who did that segment or who had that line or who acted that way? Like, she really has carved out a lane for her. The way she plays off of Piper Niven really works. Her being U.S. champion is something I'm looking forward to. I hope it happens. And she's good in the ring, but she has sort of a gimmick that suggests she's there because she's not good, but she's, over the top comical or has a big personality. But the good part is she can actually deliver in the ring too. So I'm not saying the U.S. title was created for her. I don't know that she'll for sure be the first champion, but I'm glad that she moved on. Jake.
Yeah, I mean, she's very good from a comedic perspective. She takes insane risks with her character at every opportunity. She takes big bumps. She's solid in the ring. I don't know why it's taken this long to elevate her and put her in a position to to hold a championship, because I think she's been ready for a while now. But if the U.S. title is the right opportunity for her, then I'm all for it, because I think she's been one of the most consistently entertaining female performers in WWE for quite a while now.
Next from Chris, perfect 2 slaps on the ambulance door by Nick Aldis. Chef's kiss. You got to do it. You got to pat the door twice before it drives off. Naomi did it. Did Naomi do it? That crossed my mind. Is Naomi got featured more? You kind of did what you can do with her. Is a heel run of Naomi next? Is she the one who took out Jade?
I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, there was a time when she was attempting to qualify for the the women's world title, and she lost a match to Bayley, and afterwards you saw that look on her face, like, ooh, she's there's something else under the surface there. And so I'm all for giving people an opportunity to do something new. I think she's very much been typecast as this effervescent sort of babyface character since she's returned, and she's often played that role in WWE. But I've liked her heel work in the past, and I think she could accomplish big things there if they gave her a chance.
The singles mid-card on the men's side of SmackDown feels so thin. I don't need to see Escobar and LA Knight again. Shinsuke is a welcome addition. Ciampa would help the division as a singles. Do you think Ciampa's going singles? I think Ciampa and Gargano I think Gargano sides with Ciampa, either because he's already on his side, or more likely he just kind of works his way there. I think they keep DIY together and feud him with Motor City Machine Guns before any kind of split. Maybe there's a split afterwards. Not against Ciampa being a singles wrestler, but I mean, everything he's doing right now is building up a match with the Guns. And so to me, it just seems like Gargano will join him either enthusiastically or reluctantly, either because he sides with him or he hopes he can change and control him. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I would agree. I think he sides with his partner, and whether that takes him down a heel path or not, I guess, is not inevitable in one way or the other. But I would prefer him to turn heel, because I think he's been a babyface on the main roster, and I think his best work in NXT was as a heel, and he hasn't really gotten a chance to show that yet. So I would like to see it. And if they're going to break up a tag team and make 2 singles wrestlers out of them, I would rather it be like Theory and Waller or something, where it feels like those two. Yeah, eventually. Like it feels like they're in a place where they've done pretty much all they can do as the goofy jobber duo. So that let's pull them apart at some point here.
Yeah. I feel like, in fairness to AEW, I should criticize the video package interrupting the beginning of the match. It didn't add anything to the match, and with Shinsuke appearing in person, I'm not sure it had any point at all. It hurt the match by telegraphing the run-in. In a way, I'd say it didn't telegraph the run-in, because it felt like we're only going to get a video package. We're not going to get to see him. The video message, I think, was important to frame Shinsuke playing mind games with LA Knight. It created the distraction that led to an advantage that put LA Knight in jeopardy. The ref at least waited for Knight to stand before calling for the bell. I don't know if it's my top pet peeve. I think it probably is in AEW, where the heels always attack the babyface before the bell, and the ref thinks it's their obligation to reward the heel for the illegal attack by frantically calling for the bell. It's so stupid, and I don't get how Tony Khan can sit on a headset and watch that and think, wait, this doesn't. Why are we doing this? It makes no sense. But
agreed.
Yeah. But anyway, so the ref waited for LA Knight to stand. I wish he would have said, "Are you ready to go?" Also, because I don't think just standing barely should be the reason that the bell rings. But I can nitpick that. But I was okay. I was okay with the video package. Jake?
Yeah, no, I think it was necessary to get where they were going, and I think the Shinsuke video packages, as I think I mentioned earlier, I thought have been a huge upgrade over having him try to go out there and deliver a couple of broken English sentences, which never quite got him a connection with the crowd. And I think people are more excited about watching these Japanese promos with the subtitles, because at least it gives you a better window into who he is attempting to be as a personality, where I don't think you got that chance when he was trying to speak English.
The Cody Kevin face-to-face would have been an A+ for me if it ended with Kevin's "I hate you," but I love the segment. Yeah, he told Cody he hates him, and then he began to leave, and Cody said, "You don't hate me, you hate yourself." And now I know the lengths you'll go to. And there's no line you won't cross. Cody got in the last word. Should Cody have gotten in the last word, or was there a way for Cody to play that, Jake, where KO says, "I hate you," and Cody just says a million words through an expression or something?
Yeah, I think I would have preferred Owens get the last word and then have have Cody, wear a facial expression or mutter some words off camera or whatever the case may be. I think it would have been a more powerful conclusion if Owens had forced Cody to do a little bit of introspection about his decision making with siding with Roman Reigns in that tag match and that kind of thing, because I think that's they haven't really explored it, and they didn't really attempt to explore it here. They just had Cody sort of change the subject and play the Uno reverse card and start talking about what Owens had been doing again. And so I guess I hope they touch on that next week before we get to the pay-per-view.
Chris brings up a good point. Giovanni Vinci still on the roster, confirmed. Carmelo Hayes chatting with him in the background. So I guess if he's on official or unofficial suspension, had a personal hiatus, was whatever. I don't know why, but I mean, the vignettes ended and he got beat. But there he is in the background. Interesting how the heels are talking about Cody. Feels like Punk and Drew promos. Yeah, I mean, Cody leaves himself vulnerable for it, but so far the fans are very much still with him. The women's War Games build was meh. Yeah, I'd agree with that. We didn't really talk about it much for good reason. And he goes, holy shit, it's Paul Heyman. I don't like that it's Punk, but who cares? Paul Heyman's back. And that's how Chris ends it. Jake, dare I say, nearly 2.5 hours into this, anything we didn't cover that you want to bring up?
No, I think we covered everything. I'm good.
Yep. All right, good. Chat room, you were great. Thanks. I wanted to get to more of your comments, but we can't be here all night. Thanks to our super chatters. Thanks to our callers. Jake, check out his work at prowrestling.net. Support prowrestling.net. Jason Paul with a membership subscription also. And if you stuck with us, what is it? PWMembership.net, Jake? Is that right? Yeah,
yep,
PWMembership.net. Find out about the benefits that come with the membership over there. We appreciate Jake's time and Jason on the flagship every 3 weeks. We also, of course, encourage you to support us with a membership. You can go to, if you are a Spotify subscriber, you can search PWTorch VIP in Spotify, and that'll bring up our Patreon membership. You can sign up there. And within the Spotify ecosystem, you can listen to our VIP podcast. That includes, by the way, these free shows with the commercial breaks just skipped right over because we upload the shows. The free shows have digitally inserted ad breaks that all podcasts do these days and some in-house plugs. Those just aren't part of the VIP level feed. So it's a nice streamlined listening experience. There's some podcasts I listen to, and if they offer to, in like sports and other topics, and if they offered a way to eliminate ads, I'd pay for it. I'd support them, and it'd be nice not to have to hit fast forward or be taken out of the flow of things. So that's one way to support us. You can go right to patreon.com/PWTorchVIP also. But we have a main tier for VIP. You can find out about that, which unlocks 35 plus years of archives, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, including my KFAN radio show with really fun call-in format like this from the early 90s. Our podcast library going back 20 years, an ad-free version of our website with all our articles, exclusive articles that are part of our weekly Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter. You can subscribe to our podcast in different groups and tiers. You can have multiple feeds with a full VIP membership and customize your experience for your favorite shows. You can split up retro shows versus current event shows. Real customizable. Full details on that at pwtorch.com/govip. That'll tell you about our Patreon option. I'll tell you about our main VIP option. And you can also seamlessly get our VIP shows and ad-free shows with your iPhone using the Apple Podcast account. Just search PWTorch. There's a charcoal gray VIP logo that'll pop up. Click on that. You can get some free samples there, but mostly it's there so you can upgrade to full VIP access of our podcasts using your Apple account. So you don't have to pull a credit card out or anything like that. Very seamless. So lots of ways to go VIP, lots of ways to support us if you like our brand of coverage of wrestling and you want to support a small business. If you like our approach to how we do this, that's a really good way to do it. And we appreciate each and every one of you who do. Of course, we appreciate everybody who listens in general. It's not in everyone's budget or time frame or whatever to go VIP, but we invite you to and hope you will. But if you don't, we appreciate you listening to us otherwise. Again, thanks to Jake. Thanks to everybody else. And we will talk to you if you're a VIP member tomorrow night after Full Gear with our roundtable. And I believe Brandon LeClaire will be doing a live post show here on YouTube also with a co-host. So be on the lookout for that. Check out my report at pwtorch.com Saturday night covering Full Gear, and we'll have details on our live post show. And then VIP members on our VIP feed will get to hear our roundtable. That is just for VIP members that I'll be hosting right after the show also. That'll become available late Saturday night or given that it's AEW, early Saturday morning, early Sunday morning in the early AM hours. Thanks, everybody.